Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1761, Slander. Not every warrior had the chance to see the Godly Way tablets. Their existence was elusive and legendary for others. Moreover, the comprehension of the Godly Ways under the Godly Way tablets was an extremely serious test. The power it offered was not easily attained. If things went wrong, their souls might shatter. In fact, most proving godly warriors only learned the godly ways from the tutelage of true gods. Nonetheless, each true god had their own unique instructions. The holy beings knew more about the godly ways. As such, if they passed on their knowledge personally, their disciples would better comprehend the godly ways. With any luck, they might even gain the holy beings' own insights that they couldn't gain from godly way tablets. But not everyone was able to receive such treatment. Only the descendants and disciples of the holy beings had the qualifications. That was the reason why the disciples of the holy beings were so much stronger than ordinary true gods. Their knowledge and comprehension of the godly ways were vastly different. Second to the holy beings were consummate true gods, top-rank true gods, mid-rank true gods, etc. The lower one's cultivation level was, the shallower their comprehension of the godly ways would be. There were huge differences in the instructions of different low-rank true gods. A low-rank master would definitely produce a rather weak disciple. The heavenly Han house boasted of all sorts of true gods who had comprehended hundreds of the most common godly ways. Therefore, it was the most famous place in six-burdened divine city, and countless proving godly warriors wanted to join it. However, only a chosen few would truly be part of the heavenly Han house. It was very picky about its recruitment process. The proving godly warriors who couldn't join the heavenly Han house could only linger around it all day long. Lucky for those who failed, the heavenly Han house was generous. Whenever its members were free, they would invite some true gods to teach the warriors outside the house. That was what the old man was doing. He imparted the 5 elements godly way today, which was one of the most widely spread godly ways in the divine land. Some proving godly warriors who were unable to join the proving godly houses would naturally seize this opportunity to comprehend the godly ways for free and listen attentively. Zen had already made up his mind to join the heavenly Han house. Although countless proving godly warriors blocked his path, Zen was not anxious at all. Nonetheless, he kept his focus on the old man. After the old man's lecture ended, he wanted to make some inquiries. With that thought in mind, Zen found an empty seat and went up to sit down with his knees crossed. He did not intend to cultivate the 5 elements godly way. However, the instructions of the godly ways contained the truth, so Zen would also get much from it. With curious eyes, Zen planned to listen attentively to the old man. However, just as he sat down, a bald warrior's face sank. The bald warrior immediately screamed at him, "Get the heck out of my way." Zen was not aware of the inside information. He only knew that everyone could listen to the lectures of the heavenly Han house. However, the seats in front of the house were in high demand. Additionally, the best seats were occupied by some proving godly warriors who stayed in six-burdened divine city all year round. To obtain the best seats, the warriors fought fiercely. Some fought outside the city, while others fought through other channels. Zen was a newcomer, but he had occupied one of the better seats. As the bald warrior next to Zen was not familiar with him, he gave Zen a hard time. The bald warrior looked at Zen with murderous eyes. If the bald warrior kindly advised him, then Zen would have probably apologized politely and left. He also knew it was inappropriate to occupy the seat and he had to keep the order of arrival. It didn't matter if he had to stay a little far away. However, the bald warrior's abusive words provoked Zen. He glanced at the warrior and calmly replied, "Everyone can sit on this empty seat. Why do you want me to leave? Brat, you're new here, right?" From Zen's words, the bald warrior immediately learned that Zen was completely unaware of the inside information. He continued with his rough attitude towards Zen. "The seat you're sitting on is for the son of Master Pang in the heavenly Han house. If your parents died early and didn't teach you the rules, I can teach you." As he heard the bald warrior's words, a cold light flashed through Zen's eyes. The bald warrior had started to get in Zen's nerves, but Zen was able to restrain his emotions. Although the bald warrior had the same level of cultivation as Zen, the difference between their strength was as wide as heaven and earth. Among the proving godly warriors, perhaps only the top disciples from the wealthy and influential clans on the floating islands could compete with Zen. His strength was already above average compared to divine citizens. Zen actually planned to ignore the bald warrior and just sit calmly for the lecture. No matter what the warrior said, it wouldn't be able to shake Zen. However, the bald warrior had even sworn at Zen's parents. As such, Zen was badly triggered. However, Zen was aware that it would be very foolish to create a ruckus in Six-Burden Divine City. To achieve his plans, he had no choice but to endure such profanities. When he noticed that Zen was silent, the bald warrior felt even more offended as Zen had ignored him. The bald warrior suddenly stood up with an extremely angry expression on his face. Then, with a shameless voice, the bald warrior shouted, "Master Wu, this guy actually criticizes your understanding of the godly way. He said you are talking nonsense." The old man surnamed Wu from the Heavenly Han House shook his head as he lectured. Slowly but accurately, he spoke about his comprehension of the five elements godly way. To share his own comprehension of the five elements godly way was quite enjoyable for him. He even thought that he could learn something new from such lectures. Master Wu's most hated people were those who interrupted his lecture. When he heard the bald warrior's words, his face instantly revealed a trace of anger. "Who said I was talking nonsense?" "Him, the new guy. I heard what he said. He looks down upon you." Apart from the bald warrior, several other proving godly warriors around Zen suddenly jumped out and pointed at him. All of them looked at Zen with disdain. Those people were probably in the same group. Under the guise of public honesty, their false testimony became quite credible. In reality, that was what they usually did. If someone sat randomly in a seat that he shouldn't, they would drive him away in this way. Since there were several of them against a lonesome warrior, their claims would seem even more believable. Normally, the true God who taught the godly ways would drive out the troublemaker. However, Master Wu took the matter rather seriously. He did not drive Zen away immediately. Instead, he walked up to Zen, stared at him and asked, "Tell me, why did you say I talked nonsense? If you can't explain clearly, get the heck out of here. Young people nowadays are getting bolder and bolder. How dare you talk sheer nonsense at the gate of the Heavenly Han House?" Everyone stared angrily at Zen. Apart from a few warriors who knew about the inside story, most of the proving godly warriors felt that Zen was here to cause trouble. Their free lecture was interrupted by a no-name newcomer. In his current predicament, it was useless for Zen to defend himself. Rather, it would only make things worse for him. The bald warrior wore a satirical expression. He was secretly happy in his heart. This guy brings contempt upon himself. He should have left voluntarily, but he's stubborn. I have no choice but to force him to leave in this way. I wonder how he plans to get out of this. Zen slowly stood up, cupped his hands towards the true God and said plainly, "From what I see, you were indeed talking nonsense." Quote. The proving godly warriors that saw what happened were greatly dumbfounded. They watched the drama unfold before their eyes indifferently just now, but what Zen said left them stunned. Even the bald warrior was no exception. He stared at Zen with his mouth wide open. Such a response from Zen was clearly unpredicted. It was one thing to say something in private, but it was another thing to say it in front of others. All of the proving godly warriors there had come to learn the five elements godly way. As such, they could be considered as the students of Master Wu. Zen's words greatly embarrassed Master Wu. Anyway, Master Wu was a true god. As Zen humiliated him in public, his face was deathly pale. "What did you say? Say it again." "In my opinion, you were talking nonsense," Zen repeated as he remained his callous expression. Quote. The faces of the warriors present stiffened even more. Zen's responses were truly out of their imaginations. Some of them began to whisper among themselves. "Is this man crazy? Although the people of the Heavenly Han House have always been nice, they can't bear to be slandered like this." Even though Master Wu is only a low-ranked true god, he has a deep understanding of the five elements godly way. Master Wu's lips hardened and an angry mask shadowed his face. However, a burst of laughter suddenly came out of his mouth. "Oh, why did you say that?" Alas, Zen sighed in his heart. He didn't want to offend Master Wu, but under the circumstances, he had no choice but to say, "It's a good idea to use the four words of generation, restriction, subjugation, and counter-restriction to summarize the five elements." "But Master Wu, what you said is the exact same as the Godly Way tablet." The godly ways can be comprehended in thousands of ways. You have just comprehended the literal meanings and drawn conclusions based on partial understanding. As such, it is very difficult to see through everything. Humph. Most true gods in the divine land cultivate the 5 elements godly way. What's wrong with this concept? Master Wu felt a trace of surprise in his heart after he heard Zen's words. Nonetheless, he still questioned Zen coldly. Zen shook his head. It's absolutely wrong. We can't follow the old rules when comprehending the godly ways. There are 25 different forms of the 5 elements godly way. However, there are 2 taboos, namely the firewood taboo and the water-earth taboo. We must first remove these 2 taboos before we can take a step forward. Many low-rank true gods have no idea of this, so they can't cultivate the 5 elements godly way. Presumably, this is also the reason why you have been unable to make progress in the 5 elements godly way. After Zen finished his sentence, Master Wu's expression changed. His previously angry expression had disappeared. Chapter 1762, Throwing Him Out. The old man had already been a true god for many years now, and he was currently stuck in the 2 taboos of the 5 elements godly way. These 2 taboos respectively referred to the firewood taboo and the water-earth taboo. They were easier said than done. Due to these 2 taboos, the old man was having difficulties improving his cultivation base and thus making a breakthrough in his godly tile. Common proving godly warriors weren't actually aware that these 2 taboos existed. Even if a small number of proving godly warriors had gotten wind of them in the past, they wouldn't have the capacities of understanding what the 2 taboos meant. That was, until now, of course. The young proving godly warrior in front of them now was capable of seeing through these 2 taboos with a single sentence. This had greatly shocked the old man. In fact, there was a reason why the old man was unable to break down these 2 taboos. Furthermore, here in the divine land, only the taboo-breaking pill had the power to break them down. The taboo-breaking pill was actually a fusion of the wood-melting pill and the water-dissolving pill, which were respectively made of the fire-shaped bird's ever-burning comb and the earth-barbarian beast's heart. After consuming the taboo-breaking pill, a warrior would have a 30% chance of breaking down the 2 taboos. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. However, both the wood-melting pill and the water-dissolving pill were 5 times refined pills. Once the 2 kinds of pills fused together and refined each other, they would become a 6 times refined pill, the taboo-breaking pill. A 6 times refined pill was far from something that a lower-level true god in the heavenly Han house could possess. The old man had been diligently working in the heavenly Han house for more than half a divine era now, but he had only saved enough money for 1 wood-melting pill. Even if he could also afford a single water-dissolving pill, he would still have to spend more money in order to hire a pill refiner who would fuse the 2 pills together. One way or another, the costs were high. Generally speaking, those who had a good pair of eyes were respected. Although the old man was a bit harsh, his tone appeared a bit calmer after Zen spoke so easily of his bottleneck. It was safe to say that his tone was still flat, if not cold as he said, "So what if I'm restrained by the 2 taboos? What's wrong with my godly way?" Zen smiled and calmly replied, "Sir, you know that according to what you taught us, we will definitely be stuck by the 2 taboos. Isn't that the problem of your godly way?" Humph. With so many true gods practicing the 5 elements godly way, how many warriors have actually managed to overcome these 2 taboos? You're just messing around with me. Somebody, get this guy out of here. As the old man shouted, 2 people rushed out of the heavenly Han house. The 2 individuals were low-rank true gods and their expressions were cold, their gazes sharp like blades. Apparently, they were the Han clan's guards and they seemed to mean business. "Wait a moment," said Zen, as he waved his hand slightly in the air. "Sir, I said that according to your method of practicing the godly way, sooner or later, we'd be bound to meet up with the 2 taboos. That's because you only know one way to break them down, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, of course." The old man only raised his eyebrows without saying a word and then stretched out his hand to stop the Han clan's guards. He stared at Zen and sneered, "Could it be that you have some sort of brilliant idea? Do you know the second way of solving it?" The many proving godly warriors in the area looked at Zen, with a look of derision on their faces. Despite their expressions, Zen did question the old man's lecture without a hitch, and this surprised the proving godly warriors. The old man was a true god who taught the godly way. He might not have had great strength, but he did have solid comprehension of the godly way, and was the most adept at explaining such theories. Astonished, these proving godly warriors felt a trace of jealousy towards Zen, which was something they'd never admit to. Now that he had spoken a few of his opinionated words, Zen was to be driven away, which of course pleased the proving godly warriors. This is what we call showing off one's incompetence in the presence of an expert. Ha ha, the bald warrior laughed. Surprisingly, Zen cupped his hands as a faint smile spread across his face. Although I am a proving godly warrior, I also have a little comprehension of the 5 elements godly way. There really is a second way to overcome the 2 taboos, and this method doesn't need to rely on the taboo-breaking pill, he stated slowly, making sure everyone was listening to him. Ha ha, yeah, right. Upon hearing Zen's words, the old man let out a series of mocking sneers. The sullen faces of the 2 guards from the heavenly Han house standing beside the old man couldn't help but crack a smile, too. In fact, every one of the proving godly warriors burst into laughter along with him. They ridiculed Zen, what a joke he was. Once the old man's laugh tingled off, he suddenly spoke in a contrasting, cold voice, according to your bones, you're not old at all. Why don't you spend your time learning to do things the right way instead of becoming a liar? I want to hear what kind of method you've come up with for breaking down the 2 taboos. We all want to hear it, really. At this, Zen didn't appear flustered at all. Instead, he calmly replied, when a warrior has just learned the 5 elements godly way, their godly tile has 2 cracks in it because the 5 elements are mixed. Fire and wood are hard to merge together, and earth and water repel each other. Thus, these 2 cracks lead to 2 taboos. The 5 elements godly way has been passed down for generations and generations, and countless proving godly warriors have tried to prove the godly way with the ancient method. Despite that though, they didn't think of another solution and had never been able to avoid these 2 taboos. And that's why you were wrong to only follow what is recorded on the godly way tablet. You can use the power generated from metal in order to make up for the lack, or the crack. In other words, if you make iron in your cinnabar field, it will automatically fix it. Although this method takes a lot of time and effort, it will eventually work out after performing it for a good 10,000 years. Anyway, a normal true god wouldn't be able to obtain the taboo-breaking pill. After he finished speaking, Zen stood with his hands behind his back, his gaze indifferent. His eyes were looking nowhere, yet everywhere at once. All of the proving godly warriors that had heard Zen speak felt dazed and confused, as they didn't understand what Zen was saying at all. This guy is such a clown. He's just randomly making stuff up as he goes. You know, some people just don't have much ability, but they sure are good at talking nonsense. Talking garbage like that in front of your teacher is just the same as courting death. Seeing that the old man surnamed Wu hadn't responded anything yet, though the proving godly warriors began whispering to one another. They were waiting in anticipation to see Zen thrown out. But the old man didn't budge. He stood in his spot, lost deep in his thoughts as he contemplated what Zen had just said. Suddenly, an idea flashed within his mind, as if a bolt of lightning had streaked right before his eyes, invigorating his soul. At that moment, his face flushed red and he looked abnormally agitated, as if he had grabbed onto some kind of life-saving straw. He could no longer keep his tone calm and under control. You said we could make up for it with iron. How much wood and metal would you say it needs, then? Of the 5 elements, the melding of metal and wood would form the force of iron. 30% and 70%, Zen replied with confidence. 30% and 70%, repeated the old man, as his voice trailed off. The old man acted as if he had been struck dumb, walking back and forth in front of everyone, contemplating the information he had just received. He had completely forgotten to control his demeanor in front of his disciples. His head was lowered in thought. The crowd looked at each other in confusion and a low mumble began to spread. They didn't know what was wrong with the old man, who suddenly seemed to be going insane. Making up for it with iron. Filling the crack with, it may be a stupid method, but it's a heck of a lot better than the taboo-breaking pill. This method really works. The old man exclaimed, now pondering the feasibility of the method in his heart. Ultimately, he was approving the method that Zen had offered. In order to earn more money and break down these 2 taboos, the old man had stayed in the heavenly Han house as a teacher. According to his calculations, with that extra bit of salary, it would probably take him 1 or 2 divine eras to accumulate enough divine might coins. But according to Zen's blunt method, it would only take him 10,000 years. This would greatly save time and would benefit countless low-rank true gods who cultivated the 5 elements godly way in the future. Who are you, and where did you hear about this method? The old man stared straight at Zen with bright, gleaming eyes. It looked as though he was trying to devour Zen with his sight. I have a basic understanding of the 5 elements godly way. And I came up with this method on my own, Zen replied, cupping his hands anew. That is impossible, I call trash. How can you have such a deep understanding when you are so young? The old man looked at Zen with disbelief written all over his face. All the proving godly warriors and the 2 guards of the heavenly Han house were completely dumbfounded and couldn't believe what they had just heard. Moments ago, the old man had already said that Zen was a swindler. Thus, the other warriors only naturally treated him as such. Never, ever had they expected that with just a few short sentences, the old man's evaluation of Zen would change so drastically. As for the bald warrior still standing next to Zen, his expression was also that of disbelief, eyes wide and mouth agape. How could he have imagined that chasing away the guy beside him would have led to such a bizarre event? At the same time though, a bad feeling rose in his heart. Zen suddenly continued, "Allow me to explain. What I have just said was not with the intention to laugh at you. It's just that I sat in the wrong seat and was slandered by this person. Besides, I never said that what you taught was trash and nonsense. That was also from the people who joined together to slander me. My only choice was to push the boat with the current." As Zen spoke, he pointed to the bald warrior standing beside him. The old man glanced at the bald warrior. Right now, it was no longer important whether or not Zen had been so rude. What counted was that Zen had pointed out a solution that no one had ever thought of before. Because Zen had made such an explanation, the old man would take action, of course. Now it was the old man who pointed at the bald warrior before saying, "Throw him out. I don't want to see him ever again." Whoosh, whoosh. As soon as these words left the old man's mouth, 2 figures zoomed toward the bald warrior. The 2 guards, one on each side of him, picked up the bald warrior and threw him out of the crowd. Chapter 1763, Repaying the Favor. Although Zen had a little knowledge of the 5 elements godly way, he really didn't have a very deep understanding of it. Zen was not the one to say what he had just said, but Master Evil in his mind. He would have been unable to provide that advice without Master Evil's help. Master Evil chuckled and said, "The powerhouses on the floating islands in the divine land simply think nothing of 6 times refined pills. If the wealthy clans, disciples were to encounter the 2 taboos, they'd just take a few pills. We ordinary true gods have struggled so hard for so many years, and yet we don't even have a single 5 times refined pill. We had no other choice but to come up with this method." Master Evil had also trained in the 5 elements godly way. In addition, he had personally visited the 5 elements godly way tablet and studied it. His understanding of the 5 elements godly way far surpassed that of an ordinary low-rank true god. As he had said before, breaking the 2 taboos by using the force of iron was stupid. The 2 taboos were not problems for the holy beings and their disciples. In their eyes, 5 and 6 times refined pills were of no importance, so they wouldn't waste time thinking about a method for breaking the taboos. Even if some of them did come up with the idea, they would not bother to use the force of iron. Master Evil was considered a talent among the warriors with no strong backgrounds. With his super talent, he had reached the peak of mid-rank true god. There weren't many true gods like Master Evil throughout all the divine land. After Master Wu had ordered the guards to chase away the bald martial artist, he looked out at the crowd and said, "That's all for today." He then stared at Zen, as if afraid that Zen would leave. "Follow me." Zen nodded at once his head and was immediately led by Master Wu into the heavenly Han house. Today's lecture had ended earlier than expected, and all of the proving godly warriors had expressions of regret on their faces. Watching Zen's back as he walked away, they were green with envy. A few of the old proving godly warriors had stayed in Six Bird and Divine City for countless years, but they had gained nothing from it to date. The time when they joined the heavenly Han house and cultivated the godly ways appeared as far away as ever. It was obvious to them that Zen was still young, probably less than 100 years old. With just a few words, he had been led into the heavenly Han house by Master Wu, and they had every reason to be jealous. The heavenly Han house was a proving godly house of the Han clan. In the eyes of proving godly warriors, it was one of the best places for cultivation, only second to the floating islands in Time Sea. Of course, to ordinary proving godly warriors and even many true gods, the floating islands were just like legends. None of them truly had any extravagant hopes of ever setting foot in the floating islands, and thus, they didn't take the islands into consideration. In other words, the heavenly Han house was the best place to cultivate in the Six Burden region. Zen entered the gate of the heavenly Han house and was welcomed into a wide and flat square. On both sides of the square were numerous corridors. Led by Master Wu, he walked along the corridors and entered the side of the heavenly Han house, passing through a lush garden. The winding paths led to a secluded quiet place. The beautiful scenery there was pleasant to look at and easy on the eyes. Not long after reaching this beautiful spot, Zen was brought to a courtyard, which was Master Wu's residence. Once Master Wu invited Zen to sit down, he immediately followed up with a question. Sir, is your surname Luo? Zen nodded. May I ask for your full name? Master Wu asked. I am Thad Luo, Zen replied, cupping his hands together. Master Wu nodded. I'm wondering which clan on the floating island you're from, and why you've come to Six Bird and Divine City. In Master Wu's eyes, not to mention the proving godly warriors, even low-ranked true gods couldn't be that smart. Given Zen's insight, it was very possible that he came from a wealthy and influential clan on the floating island. I've never been to any floating island, Zen quickly denied, with a shake of his head. And his answer had been honest. Let alone went to the floating islands, he had never even heard of what they looked like before. Oh, really? Is that true? Master Wu laughed with disbelief. His face was still filled with doubt as he said, you don't come from any of the floating islands, and yet you said that you came up with the idea of using iron to break down the 2 taboos on your own. How can I even begin to trust you? It wasn't a question of talent. If Zen's comprehension of the 5 elements godly way had reached such a level, it was simply impossible for him to be just a proving godly warrior. He should have become a true god long ago, and besides, by using the force of iron to break the 2 taboos, he would become a mid-rank true god in only 10,000 years. With this logic, it was easy to see why Master Wu thought Zen was lying. Zen knew that Master Wu would have such suspicions, so he had already prepared an explanation. To be honest, the method of using the force of iron to break the 2 taboos wasn't invented solely by me, but left behind by a nameless senior. Master Wu, think about it. Those wealthy and influential clans on the floating islands would have to be really bored to come up with such a stupid method. They can have access to the taboo-breaking pills easily. Why would they even need to go through so much trouble? Well, Master Wu hadn't thought about things so deeply just yet. Listening to Zen, he solemnly nodded in agreement. The top-ranked true gods, consummate true gods and the holy beings had monopolized nearly 90% of the divine might coins in the divine land. 6 times refined pills were nothing more than common objects in their eyes. Zen was right, they had no reason whatsoever for using the force of iron to break taboos. Master Wu continued, indeed, from the looks of it, the nameless senior you're speaking of is an intelligent warrior with a humble background. I have studied the 5 elements godly way all my life, but I have never thought of such a method. As you said, I must be blinded by the old system. Alas. In fact, I need your help in the heavenly Han house. Zen took this opportunity to make a request. Master Wu glanced at Zen. Although Zen hadn't told him what his purpose was, Master Wu could easily take his guess. You want to join the heavenly Han house, I presume? Zen nodded. The reality was, too many proving godly warriors wished to join the heavenly Han house. All of the proving godly warriors viewed the heavenly Han house as a springboard to success. Once they joined the heavenly Han house, they knew they would become true gods. Almost every day, a few warriors burned with the desire to ask Master Wu for help in joining the heavenly Han house. However, in the end, they had to rely on their own strength and talent in order to be accepted there. Master Wu finally understood that this warrior, who was named Thad Luo, wasn't from any influential clan, nor was he extremely talented. He was only an ordinary proving godly warrior, and had simply been lucky enough to find a way for breaking the taboos. Using his discovered method as an exchange, he wanted to join the heavenly Han house. Zen had enlightened Master Wu with his words and had truly helped Master Wu quite a bit by doing do. Therefore, Master Wu felt Zen's request was one he could not refuse. He only shook his head and said, although I am a true god of the heavenly Han house, I can't make the exception of bringing you into the house. You have to pass the selection process before you enter, just like anyone else. When the heavenly Han house recruited proving godly warriors, there were usually over 100,000 warriors participating in the test at the same time. However, only about 10 of them would be recruited in the end. Master Wu wasn't even the one to decide who made the cut. Moreover, those who joined the heavenly Han house were all highly talented among the proving godly warriors. Even if Master Wu helped Zen cheat, Zen would quickly expose himself if he was not talented enough to enter the heavenly Han house. I can recommend you and help you get a place in the test, though. Master Wu wore an odd expression on his face as he said this. Generally speaking, it was hard for ordinary martial artists to enter their names for the test. After all, a place in the test could be sold for 7 or 8 divine might coins, which wasn't considered a small amount. However, the mystical method for breaking the 2 taboos that Zen had told Master Wu was far from being worthy of such a price. Sure, Zen had rendered enormous help to Master Wu, but Master Wu could only help him obtain a place in the test, so he felt rather apologetic. Zen smiled slightly. Your help will be greatly appreciated if you get me a place. I'm not picky. What Master Wu didn't know though, was that Zen didn't value the opportunity of furthering his training in the Heavenly Han House. The Heavenly Han House was just a springboard beneath his feet, and his final goal was the floating island of the Han clan. If he couldn't even enter the Heavenly Han House with his true abilities, how would he ever be able to enter that floating island? It was already more than enough for Zen to obtain a spot in the test. There was no need for Master Wu to worry about the rest. If that's the case, then so be it. You have picked the right timing. The Heavenly Han House assesses only once in a year, and the test will begin in 1 month. Already more than half of the slots to take part in the test have been given out. Wait here a minute, I'll get a slot for you. With that, Master Wu turned on his heel and left the courtyard. Not long after, he came back with a white jade token in his hand. He handed the token to Zen and said, "Just engrave your name on it." Zen accepted the white jade token and held it in his hand. There was a cool feeling that seemed to be radiating from it. This kind of jade was extremely rare in the universe, but rather common in the Divine Land. Zen stood up and bid farewell to Master Wu. Once Zen had left and was out of earshot, Master Wu shook his head and muttered, "I hope that you can rely on your own abilities to enter the Heavenly Han House, but I'm afraid that there's no hope for you this year." This year was a great year for the Han clan's test, and all of the talented disciples of the 36 regions under the jurisdiction of Han clan would be gathered in the Heavenly Han House. Zen was less than 100 years old. Although Master Wu didn't have the chance to verify his talent, he knew he stood no chance in front of all those super talented martial artists. He still wished him good luck in his heart though. Chapter 1764, Brilliant Moon Restaurant. It would be a month before the test of the Heavenly Han House began. Zen decided to stay in the Six Bird and Divine City during this time. More and more people flocked to the Six Bird and Divine City, and a vast majority of them were proving godly warriors. They were obviously here with the aim of entering the Heavenly Han House. There were still a lot forces in the vast space outside the Divine Cities. Some sects were even willing to pay a lot of money to send some of their talented disciples to the Heavenly Han House. They hoped that these talents could cultivate godly ways in the Heavenly Han House and then give back to their sects. Apart from the various sects, the smaller clans of the 36 regions also hoped for their own disciples to enter the Heavenly Han House. Thanks to all this activity, the Six Bird and Divine City had become very lively. The price of using a space tunnel was as high as 100 Divine Might coins. But it wasn't a problem for the clans that controlled the Divine Cities. More and more proving godly warriors came to the Six Bird and Divine City through the space tunnels. The downside was that when there were too many proving godly warriors, trouble would erupt. It was a 1,000 Commandments slate that had recorded the rules of the Six Bird and Divine City. There was a huge difference between a 1,000 Commandments slate and a ruling slate, but it was naturally much more powerful than a 10 Commandments slate. The 1,000 Commandments slate could record 1,000 rules and covered a much larger area. This was why the punishment was much harsher. Some of the rules of the Six Bird and Divine City were slightly different from those of the Mirror City. The Six Bird and Divine City had banned fighting in the city, but there were still some additional rules. For example, one could issue a challenge to anyone else in the Six Bird and Divine City, but one would have to pay the price of a Divine Might coin. No matter who won, the Divine Might coin would be paid to the Six Bird and Divine City. It could be considered as a kind of a fighting tax paid to the Han clan. Most proving godly warriors of the Divine Land were very young. They had started practicing martial arts since they reached the Soul Sea realm, and it was fairly easy for the Divine citizens to reach the Spirit Transformation realm. These youths were at an age where their blood ran hot. So inevitably, they would trouble for each other when they eventually got together. And they had to pay the fighting tax the moment they began to fight. The Six Bird and Divine City was only too happy to receive more Divine Might coins. So before the test of the Heavenly Han House began, the proving godly warriors of the Six Bird and Divine City occasionally fought with each other, and the fights had become an opportunity to test each other's strength. Brilliant Moon Restaurant was the largest restaurant in the Six Bird and Divine City. A huge patio was built on the top of the restaurant, supported by 6 pillars. All customers ate at the outer circle while the center of the patio was reserved for the warriors to fight. Those who could enter the Brilliant Moon Restaurant all had some background. After all, spending 3 to 5 Divine Might coins in the restaurant every time was not something that even low-rank true gods could afford, let alone proving godly warriors. But it was not a problem for this group of martial artists, who were from wealthy families. Zen was also in the Brilliant Moon restaurant today. When Master Evil mentioned the Brilliant Moon restaurant, he became extremely excited and recommended Zen to experience the restaurant for himself. Zen had fasted for many years, and had no desire for delicious food. Moreover, the divine might coins that Master Evil had left behind weren't too many, which was why he wasn't as interested. It's not good for you to think like that. A universe built by a holy being is a secondary world, and all the 5 cereals and eggs contain impurities. But the divine land is different. The food in the divine land is in fact formed by chaotic energy, and it becomes beneficial to people when they swallow it. It is easy for divine citizens to not eat food. But in all these years, I haven't seen anyone who has continued fasting. You will understand when you go to the Brilliant Moon restaurant, Master Evil said. The path to pursue godly ways was an extremely long one and filled with boring practices. Without something to support them, it was hard for the millions of true gods to go through to the end. There was always a justified reason for them to cultivate all the way, be it for the sake of fame, benefits, sex, or desire. It was just like Master Evil had said. There was no need to worry about maintaining the purity of their bodies. There were really not many true gods in the divine land that had really given up on eating. After a long time in which Master Evil kept nagging at him, Zen's interest was piqued. Whatever the case, the divine might coins he had were from Master Evil. So he decided to go to the Brilliant Moon restaurant. The moment he stepped into the Brilliant Moon restaurant, a girl in green clothes walked over to greet him. She was a divine citizen. She glanced at Zen, and when she saw that he was wearing a plain long robe, it was obvious she was looking down on him. She tried to hide her contempt as she asked, "Sir, have you been invited here by friends?" Zen shook his head and replied, "No, I've come here alone." "This way, please." The girl nodded and led Zen to a seat on the first floor. The Brilliant Moon restaurant had 6 floors. Each floor was spacious, but the seats on the first floor weren't as good as those on the other floors. The most important purpose for people to come here, other than to taste delicious food, was to watch the fights between the proving godly warriors. This was why there was a reserved patio in the center. But since there was no enchanted barrier laid out around the patio, the first floor was easily affected by the fight of the martial artists. Zen didn't know this and took his seat rather happily. Master Evil, on the other hand, couldn't wait to introduce the dishes to Zen. The snow lotus arch here is famous, and the chill that it contains can seep into the cinnabar field, nourishing the inner world. There's also the fire duck stand. It's one of the specialties of the Brilliant Moon restaurant. Before Zen could make himself comfortable, Master Evil had already reeled out a list of the dishes in his mind. "Are these dishes expensive?" Zen asked hesitantly. "And the moon-melting wine? Expensive? Of course they are expensive. The cost of the dishes in this restaurant is sky-high. I could eat away a house with a single meal. Back then, alas." Master Evil stopped suddenly, his voice sounding depressed. When he had been locked up in the dungeon, Wayne, who was also locked up there, talked constantly about various delicacies in the divine land. Master Evil had never heard of many of the dishes that Wayne had mentioned, and every single one was too tempting to him. There was even a time when Master Evil hadn't been able to stand it any longer and had cursed Wayne. But Wayne had talked about the food non-stop, and even Estelle on the second floor could not stand it any longer. It was at her warning that Wayne had finally shut up. It hadn't been easy for him to escape the dungeon. At the moment, he only had his soul fragment left, and couldn't enjoy such delicious food. The girl serving Zen frowned as she saw that he was sitting there in a daze and wasn't ordering anything. Her eyes narrowed contemptuously. There were always poor guys who entered the 6-burden divine city in order to take the test and become a member of Heavenly Han House. They went to the Brilliant Moon restaurant but had no money to order the dishes. They just wanted to grab a seat to watch the fight between the proving godly warriors. This kind of people were truly annoying. "Sir, if you don't order anything, you can sit over there," the girl said snappily as she pointed to the other side of the patio. Rows of chairs stood in an orderly manner and quite a few people were already sitting on the chairs. As he took in the clothing of the martial artists, Zen knew that most of them were from poor families and could not afford the food in the Brilliant Moon restaurant. They felt fortunate to find a chair to sit on for free so they could get a glimpse of the strength of this year's proving godly warriors. Zen smiled faintly. This was when he noticed the disdain in the lady's eyes. He was not angry. Instead, he only smiled as he ordered the dishes Master Evil had told him about. As Zen reeled off the names of the dishes, the astonishment in the young lady's eyes became more and more obvious. It turned out that the dishes that Zen had ordered were the best in the Brilliant Moon restaurant. They weren't the most expensive, but they were definitely ones that one could not miss if they went there. Some proving godly warriors, with the support of their families, could spend extravagantly in the Brilliant Moon restaurant. But they did not understand the essence of the Brilliant Moon restaurant. What Zen had ordered were the classiest dishes of the Brilliant Moon restaurant, which was why the girl was so surprised. Once Zen had ordered the food, the girl's expression shifted. He had ordered more than 10 delicacies in one go, which meant that he would later have to pay about 200 divine might coins for the bill. As she looked Zen up and down and at the kind of clothes he was wearing, the girl was worried that he would not be able to pay the bill. However, she was not afraid. The Brilliant Moon restaurant was run by the Han clan and no one dared dine and dash here. If he really couldn't pay the bill, it was not her who would suffer in any way. As the girl left, Zen suddenly felt an imposing aura in the air. Someone from the 3rd floor jumped down and stood in the middle of the patio. He cupped his hands and said, "I am Hol Qian from the Qian clan of the Mirror City." He then raised a divine might coin and flicked it into the air. With a swish, the divine might coin rose into the air. And as if a mysterious power had seized it, it suddenly stopped in its tracks. Hol Qian raised his head and shouted towards the 4th floor, "I want to challenge Steve's son. Do you dare accept my challenge?" Chapter 1765, Battle Between Two Warriors. On the 4th floor of the Brilliant Moon restaurant, a robust proving godly warrior coldly snorted as he reached into his pocket to take out a divine might coin. The black divine might coin rolled downward and began falling from the 4th floor. Simultaneously, the proving godly warrior shouted, "I, Steve's son, accept the challenge." With that, the divine might coin that was falling to the ground was suddenly stopped in midair, caught by a mysterious power. It was at that moment that Steve jumped down from the 4th floor. He tapped the divine might coin with his toe, using it as a stepping stone. With his newfound momentum, he landed in the Brilliant Moon restaurant's patio. Whoosh! The divine might coin that had been hovering motionless in the air circled on itself a little before flying up toward the sky, zooming past the tall buildings in the 6-burden divine city and finally landing in front of a slate. In front of the slate, the densely packed divine might coins formed a small mountain, and there were at least 10,000 divine might coins. That divine might coin, it has been taken away by the power of the 1,000 Commandments slate, right? Zen asked Master Evil in his mind. Of course, once they've paid 2 divine might coins, the 2 warriors can fight each other, but still, they cannot make any move against others, Master Evil said. The delicacies that Zen had ordered were yet to be served, but at least now, there was an interesting show to watch. Although Zen felt very confident that there wouldn't be much of a problem with his entering the Heavenly Han house, he still felt the need to know the abilities of the talents of the Divine Land. The Sun and Qian clans have begun fighting each other once again. They fight against each other almost every year. I wonder why these 2 clans never get bored. You wouldn't understand. Victory or defeat between these 2 great clans is very important to them. Zen's ears perked up as he heard people chatting a little further off, and his face displayed a hint of curiosity. He stuck to the conversation at hand, and said, "Sounds to me like there's a grudge between the Sun and Qian clans. Am I wrong? The grudge between these 2 clans has probably existed for a very long time. In fact, I had already been aware of that when I was still in the vast sky region 7 divine eras ago," Master Evil laughed. As it turned out, the vast sky region was controlled by the 3 great clans and each clan occupied 2 of the divine cities. The divine city was very important to all the 3rd-tier clans across the divine land. The vast majority of the divine might coins were obtained from these divine cities. The Sun, Qian, and Yang clans each respectively owned 2 divine cities. More so, there was a central divine city in the vast sky region, which was known as the Heavenly Canopy Divine City. The Heavenly Canopy Divine City had 100 commandments slate. Regardless of size or area, this slate was much bigger than those of the other 6 divine cities, and the amount of divine might coins it could earn was only naturally much higher. Back in the day, the Han clan hadn't declared which clan owned the Heavenly Canopy Divine City, and thus, the Sun, Qian, and Yang clans were constantly arguing over the issue. Most of the time, this constant quarreling led to a battle. In the end, the Yang clan couldn't hold on any longer and left the raging battle for Heavenly Canopy Divine City instead. By doing so, the Sun and Qian clans' battle became even more intense. Overall though, the 2 great clans had still alarmed the Han clan, and the Han clan ultimately settled this dispute. Furthermore, they were also obligated to create a new rule. Every year before the Heavenly Han house admitted disciples by examination, the Sun and Qian clans should each send 3 warriors to battle one another for the ownership of the Heavenly Canopy Divine City. With such a rule, it was only natural for the Sun and Qian clans to understand the importance of nurturing their juniors, and thus poured many resources into their disciples. In the eyes of these two clans, entering the heavenly Han house was only their secondary objective. Actually winning the control of the heavenly canopy divine city was first and foremost. And this explained why Zen would have the chance to watch such a scene play out today. In other words, the two chosen ones should be the most powerful proving godly warriors from the Qian and Sun clans. Zen asked. Two of the most powerful, yes, replied Master Evil, with a chilling smile. As Zen and Master Evil discussed, the battle in the patio before them had already begun. Steve took a single step forward and headed straight for Holt. In his hand was a shining golden spear. This spear's shape was a bit strange, though. It was curved like a snake's body, and it looked like a triangular golden snake's head had been embedded into the spear head. Coiling dragon spear, Steve shouted. Although they were only sparring here in the Brilliant Moon restaurant, it still remained a duel once the divine might coins were paid up. Generally speaking, it was normal for warriors to die in a duel, especially when one of the two didn't hold back. That curved long spear stabbed outward like a snake launching out at its prey. His spear appeared to be aimed directly at Holt's head, but with a gentle twist of his wrist, it was actually aiming at his chest. Wow, what an excellent move! The Sun clan's coiling dragon spear is famous for its strange shape which makes it extremely difficult to dodge its attack. Look, with Steve's momentum, I'm afraid that the Sun clan will remain in control of the heavenly canopy divine city. Upon hearing such comments, Zen couldn't help but roll his eyes in annoyance. Although he had just arrived at the Divine Land, he had already had the chance to see the strength of the Divine Land's martial artists in the Misty Mountain Village. Thompson and Woolley were from the Misty Mountain Village, which was considered a remote mountain village, thus making it reasonable for them not to have practiced high-quality martial skills. However, in Zen's opinion, the warriors of the Sun Moon Village were also extremely weak. They might all have the cultivation of the Spirit Supreme Realm, but that was all they had. In terms of martial skills, they weren't even close to the level of those of the Soul Sea realm in the evolutionary universe. Now that Zen had arrived in the Six Burden Divine City, the people he had to face were easily considered the elites of the third-class clans. However, Steve's move still left Zen feeling disappointed. Although the coiling dragon spear was exquisite, Zen thought it was much too gaudy. He knew he could easily break through the spear with his great speed. How could the spear be considered so excellent? Zen wondered. What Zen didn't know though, was that in the universe, martial skills actually progressed much further and even much faster than those in the Divine Land. This was because the divine citizens of the Divine Land would have the capacity of surpassing the Soul Sea realm, the Spirit Supreme realm and the Spirit Transformation realm in a shorter period of time, thus becoming proving godly warriors at an early age. And after becoming a proving godly warrior, one would immediately step into the godly way. The cultivation period of those below the true god level was very short. It was therefore only normal that no one was willing to put much time and effort into studying these martial techniques. After all, once they became true gods, they were bound to have higher-level cultivation methods to study. Steve's spear pierced the air and sped toward Holt. Holt, on his behalf, was already prepared for the attack. He suddenly flipped his body into the air and dodged Steve's spear strike with an ingenious movement technique. At the same time, Holt rolled forward in an attempt to get closer to Steve. The longer a weapon was, the stronger it was considered. That said though, the longer a weapon was, the more fearful it was of being too close to the target. The closer the target was in proximity, the harder it was for the weapon to unleash its full power. There was no way Steve would allow this to happen. He held the snake-shaped golden spear in his hand tightly and shook it lightly. The head of the snake came to life at once and coiled around the golden spear, all while continuously thrusting toward Holt. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 consecutive thrusts all hit the ground. The materials in the Divine Land were far more solid than those found in the universes. If they had been in a universe, then Steve's 3 thrusts would have been capable of destroying 3 massive mountains in their entirety. However, here in the Divine Land, the thrusts only created 3 small holes in the floor. As Zen watched, he equally noticed that the floor actually had a healing function. As soon as the small holes appeared, they began to squirm inward on themselves and disappear. Other people were used to seeing such details, but this was a first for Zen, and he still felt all this was very interesting. Over in the evolutionary universe, there was no floor that could withstand the attacks of world lords. In fact, even if such a material existed there, no one would dare waste it like this and transform it into a floor. Despite the fact that Holt had already gotten quite close to Steve, none of the 3 thrusts given just moments ago had actually hit Holt. In Holt's hands, a blue light flashed. An icy blue sharp sword appeared in the blink of an eye. And with a twist of Holt's short sword, a blue ray of light unexpectedly shot outward. The sound of tearing cloth could be heard as the short sword came to a sudden halt right in front of Steve's neck. Zen raised an eyebrow. Now that wasn't a bad move, he exclaimed. Steve was short of breath and heaving as he stared at Holt. If the icy blue short sword had continued moving upward only slightly, there was no doubt that Steve would have died right here, right now. Today would have been the last day of his life. You give in? Holt asked in a calm voice. Steve glared hatefully at him, his eyes shining. In front of so many people, he had no desire of staying here any longer. He cupped his hands together, extending them toward the crowd and retreated out of the patio. Holt bowed in victory and smiled at the crowd as he prepared to leave himself. But before Holt could set foot outside the patio, a divine might coin was tossed down from upstairs. It bounced a few times on the ground, spun on itself and landed with a barely audible thud. From somewhere in the crowd, a faint voice sounded out, "Holt, how about I challenge you?" As the voice faded further away, the divine might coin on the ground suddenly jumped again, as if controlled by magic, and hovered in the air. When the voice issued its challenge, the power of the 1,000 Commandments slate appeared anew, allowing the divine might coin to float in the air. I have something more important to do, so I think I'll skip my turn this time around. In all honesty though, Holt's only desire was to challenge Steve. He didn't want to accept any challenge from anyone else. Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left the patio at once. Zen looked at the floating divine might coin indifferently. Of course, he had no intentions of fighting. Even if he won, he would still lose a divine might coin just for a battle. Such a terrible deal meant absolutely nothing to him. However, what Zen saw next made his eyes widen and brighten with excitement. Divine might coins were suddenly raining down from the 4th floor. Chapter 1766, Eric Hulen. The black divine might coins looked like both gold and wood, but they were neither gold nor wood. When they hit the floor, they made blunt and heavy sounds. About 300 to 400 divine might coins fell down from the 4th floor. All those coins became scattered on the ground. When the proving godly warriors in the Brilliant Moon restaurant saw such a scene, their breaths quickened, especially those on the 1st and 2nd floors. A few true gods also revealed an expression of interest. All their eyes were focused on the coins on the ground. 400 divine might coins were enough to buy 2 houses in 6 Burden Divine City. Such an amount was not easily gained by the warriors. To many low-ranked true gods, it was a huge sum of money. Although the warriors in the Brilliant Moon restaurant were envious, no one dared to pick the coins up. No common warrior would easily throw away such wealth. The one who dared to toss out such a large number of coins must be very influential socially. On the 4th floor, a figure descended and silently landed on the ground. The eccentric arrival of the figure piqued the interests of those around him. No warriors below the top-ranked true gods in the divine land were able to fly in the air. However, one could still be creative as he fell from a high place. The man from the 4th floor used a clever method to reduce the force of the impact and descended just like a nimble cat. The man wore a purple robe and a purple gold crown. Redness decorated his lips while his skin was flawlessly white. Beautiful features similar to a young girl's could be seen in his face. Additionally, his appearance looked no older than that of a youth at 16 or 17 years of age. No one dares to challenge me. You can at least try. If you win, all of these divine might coins will be yours, he said calmly yet with an arrogant tone. He had previously thrown a divine might coin to challenge Holt, but was rejected. Nonetheless, he still craved for a battle. Thus, a pile of divine might coins was dropped by him to trigger fights with other warriors. The divine might coins on the floor tempted those proving godly warriors. Many of them became envious. Their mouths twitched as they could only shake their heads. None of them dared to challenge the young man. He's from the Hulen clan. You mean that violent brat? Whoever dares to challenge him is truly courting death. He is extremely strong, and he doesn't hold back at all when he fights. Dangerous is the only word to describe him. Breaking an arm or a leg is not a big deal, but we may even lose our lives if we fight with him. The divine might coins were indeed great temptations, but their lives were clearly more important. So the warriors were still reluctant to accept his challenge. The Hulen clan was one of the top 3 clans under the Han clan's rule. It was also one of the few second-tier clans in the 36 regions. An influential background and powerful warriors were possessed by them. They had a close relationship with the Han clan, and some of them supported the Han clan on the floating island. The young man's real name was Eric Hulan. With exceptional talent and abilities, his potential was very great. He just reached 15 years of age this year, but he was already a proving godly warrior. Eric's appearance was even more exquisite than a woman's. However, his attacks were extremely ruthless and lethal. He went to 6 Burden Divine City a month ago. During his battles with others, he had crippled 3 proving godly warriors while another one died. His techniques were simply vicious and brutal to the point that he became famous for the injuries and deaths he caused. The dead warrior was a talented member of a 3rd-tier clan. After his clansmen knew of what happened, they went to reason with the Hulan clan. In the end, the Hulan clan only gave them some money for compensation. Given his misdeeds, the divine might coins on the ground didn't look that good anymore. It wasn't enough to entice the warriors around him to a rather deadly and dangerous fight with him. For some time, the restless atmosphere in the Brilliant Moon restaurant quieted down. No one seemed to be interested in the coins scattered by Eric. However, after a while, a burly man walked out from the right corner of the 1st floor. He was 8 feet tall and was as tall as an iron tower. Most of the people around were focused on the man's right hand. It was covered with a layer of brown scales which seemed to be the scales of some fierce animal. The burly man walked towards Eric and said with a grin, "I want to challenge you." Generally, the proving godly warriors of the clans of 2nd and 3rd tiers were on the 3rd floor and above. The elite disciples of these clans weren't interested in several hundred divine might coins. Such money might not be worth their time or possible injuries. However, those proving godly warriors on the 1st and 2nd floors were different. If they won these divine might coins, it was very likely that their fates would be changed. So it would be a reasonable risk for them. Besides, some of them had never heard of Eric before, so they weren't afraid of him. As Eric saw that someone had finally come up to challenge him, the corner of his mouth slightly curved upwards. A beautiful smile came across his pretty face. "What a handsome man, he is even more alluring than a girl," one girl said with a soft sigh. She was filled with envy about Eric's good looks. As 2 divine might coins flew into the air and shot out of Brilliant Moon restaurant, the burly man didn't say anything else. He leaned forward and charged towards Eric like a ferocious beast. A malicious aura came out of the man as he attacked fiercely. As he ran bravely towards Eric, the large man stretched out his right hand. The brown scales on his right hand began to flicker with a faint luster. Suddenly, a myriad of colors flowed through his right hand. "It's a poisonous hand. Watch out, he cultivates the poison technique. You have to be careful of his right hand. Those who dare to challenge Eric must be strong." The burly man rushed forward. As he pointed his right hand towards Eric, the man tried his best to grab Eric. The air in his palm was foul, and each of his fingers was as thick as an arm. It was not a hand. With its strange appearance, it was clearly the huge claw of a vicious beast. Eric stood firmly in the center of the arena. He calmly watched the huge claw approach him. Suddenly, with a callous look in his face, he stretched out his finger and pointed it at the center of the claw. Thud! The burly man's charge was immediately stopped. Eric's finger landed at the center of the claw. With just his index finger, he had already blocked the claw. At the same time, everyone heard a strange sound, as if some kind of metal vibrated violently. Then, circles of black ripples suddenly appeared around the burly man's arm. The ripples were extremely small. Only those with keen eyesight would be able to notice them. As soon as the ripples appeared, they began to tighten. Rustle. Immediately, the sound of a shattered object echoed in everyone's ears. Something was obviously broken in the man's body. The burly man's right hand was chopped into 7 or 8 pieces. A mixture of shock and pain was seen in his expression as each piece of his right hand fell to the ground. "Ah!" The burly man let out a loud roar. With a terrified expression, he grabbed his severed right arm and retreated 7 to 8 steps. Usually, the fight should have ended at that moment. Out of politeness and respect, Eric should give the man some time to catch his breath. After all, there was no deep-seated hatred between them. However, Eric didn't stop at all. While the burly man retreated frantically, Eric walked closer and stretched his finger towards the burly man. If his finger hit the burly man's head, the burly man would definitely be decapitated. As he thought of this, the burly man finally understood why no one dared to challenge Eric. A deathly pale expression covered the burly man's face. In a moment of desperation, he rolled horizontally on the ground. His legs stomped on the ground abruptly, and his entire body flew forward. Finally, he crashed pathetically into the outside of the patio. Some people were eating outside the patio. They were surprised as the burly man suddenly crashed towards their meal. The burly man had smashed his way through quite a few tables under the impact, but he had managed to keep his life in the end. As he failed to take the man's life, Eric had a look of regret on his face. A disappointed look was on his expression. He gently waved his index finger, and a few black ripples appeared around it. Each of his motions was dangerous, as if some kind of sharp tool was attached to his finger. What a vicious young man. Zen sat comfortably in his own seat. Nonetheless, his eyes were already focused on Eric's direction. Eric had the slightest bit of scruples when he attacked. With a murderous aura, he wanted to kill his opponent. However, his actions were too excessive under such circumstances. The divine might coins in the patio tempted Zen as well. Such a huge amount would be beneficial to him. Nonetheless, he still had no intention to make a move. Just then, the young lady from Brilliant Moon Restaurant led a few waiters to bring many delicate dishes to Zen. The servants placed the dishes on Zen's table naturally and smoothly. A marvelous meal was immediately served in front of Zen. Everyone's attention was originally focused on Eric. Coincidentally, Eric was not far away from Zen. So Zen's rather boastful display stole their attention. On the first floor of Brilliant Moon Restaurant, many proving godly warriors only ordered 1 or 2 dishes with a few divine might coins. None of them ordered as many dishes as Zen. Even the warriors on the 3rd and 4th floors didn't order so many dishes. Therefore, Zen immediately attracted the attention of all the people in Brilliant Moon Restaurant. Even Eric became interested in Zen. They all stared intently at Zen. From head to toe, Zen was gazed upon by the warriors around him, as if to gauge his worth. When they saw his clothes and face, they all felt he was a stranger. Moreover, Zen appeared to be an ordinary warrior with a humble background. How could he afford so many dishes? Sir, the dishes you ordered are all here. Please enjoy them. The girl bowed towards Zen before she left with her servants. Her thought was the same as the others, she wanted to see how Zen would settle the bill. She even suspected that Zen might not pay and instead escape after his meal. However, if Zen didn't have enough divine might coins, the girl had henchmen who were true gods. Their establishment wouldn't be easy to mess with. Zen didn't mind their gazes at all. He casually took a pair of chopsticks and poured himself a cup of wine. A delicious aroma of alcohol filled the air. Then, he pointed his finger towards the cup and a wisp of fire began to spread out. Whirl, the wine in the cup was lit ablaze. A cyan flame intensely erupted from the cup. Chapter 1767, Special Way to Eat. Cyan flame rose up from Zen's wine. It burned intensely and condensed into the shape of a crescent moon. The wine was one of the famous wines in the 6th divine city. It was called the moon-melting wine. Just a small pot of it would cost 20 divine might coins. Only extravagant and wealthy warriors were able to afford such wine. Zen thought the price was outrageous. However, Master Evil had recommended it strongly and told him that this pot of wine was the key. Everyone felt a sense of novelty when they saw Zen ignite the cup of wine. Most of their attention was focused on Zen. Some of them started to speculate about Zen's origins. Eric's round eyes also stared intensely at Zen, for he also didn't know what Zen was about to do. After he caught everyone's attention with the cyan flames, Zen held his chopsticks and reached for his first dish. The snow lotus petals on the plate overlapped with each other to form a small arched bridge. The delicate formation of the dish made it more attractive to eat. It was the famous dish of the Brilliant Moon Restaurant, the snow lotus arch. The snow lotus, which had been harvested from a snowy mountain of a snowy region, was naturally cold. At that moment, the petals still emitted a dense, cold aura. In the divine land, even the ordinary divine citizens could swallow such an extremely cold object. If it was any living being below the life and death realm in the universe, they would not even be able to come close to a 3 feet radius from the table, let alone eat it, which would be no different from courting death. When Zen used chopsticks to pick up a petal of the snow lotus, a layer of frost immediately covered his chopsticks. The petals emitted a chilly atmosphere in which Zen's breath could be seen. Soon after, Zen roasted the snow lotus petals on the fire above the cup. The crescent-shaped flame surrounded the snow lotus petals. Extremely cold objects often had extreme reactions to fire. Snow lotus petals continuously melted under the fire, and at the same time, emitted a strange stench. A smelly odor immediately filled the restaurant. So smelly. What's that disgusting smell? What is this fellow burning? This is too smelly. Can anyone stop that fellow? The stench spread out and rushed into the noses of the bystanders. This caused many people to quickly cover their noses and frown. The customers and the restaurant crew immediately threw stares of disgust at Zen. However, Zen turned a deaf ear to those voices and focused on Master Evil's instructions. The moon-melting wine is brewed in a special way. The marrow within it smells very good. However, after being burnt, its smell becomes unbearable. Additionally, if it is mixed with a snow lotus, the stench becomes even worse. Then, you will mix them with the earthy crystal tendons in the fire duck stand, and then use the fire to refine them. Then grind the spice into powder and sprinkle it on them. Zen's reaction was very quick. He would immediately do whatever Master Evil said. With great precision, he had done each task successfully. Amid the stench, the onlookers were dumbfounded. The expressions were filled with anger and disgust. The impudent fellow wasn't eating, he was obviously in the restaurant just to concoct a golden pill. Zen's hands continuously moved. Inside his head, he also reached the same conclusion as the bystanders. It seemed that Master Evil's instructions were for the concoction of pills, just that there was no furnace. He was also quite confused. Aside from his confusion, his hunger had also made him rather impatient. Why did it take him so much effort just to eat something? However, Zen still followed Master Evil's instructions, up to the very last step. Finally, Zen reached out his hand to gently condense another fire to burn. After a short while, a ding sound was heard. A golden pill had actually been burnt out from the food. The instant the golden pill appeared, a strange fragrance diffused into the air and covered the entire Brilliant Moon restaurant. He was really concocting. It smells so good. I've never smelled such a pill before. It doesn't smell like medicine at all. On the contrary, it smells like food. Zen stared at the golden pill with a look of surprise on his face. With curious eyes, he investigated the pill in front of him. He then said to Master Evil, "So you wanted me to concoct a golden pill?" "Nonsense. Do you think it is very easy to concoct the golden pills? This is only a food pill, it can only fill the stomach," Master Evil smugly said. His tone remained arrogant. The fragrance of the food pill continued to grow stronger and stronger. It was as if the aroma could seep into their souls. It caused many of the martial artists present to feel their throats churn, and they couldn't help but have a strong appetite. The delicious scent incited their hunger and made them unconsciously salivate. Naturally, Zen was no exception. A strong sense of hunger enveloped him. Curiosity for the taste of the pill eventually got the better of him. He couldn't help but grab the pill and put it in his mouth. An extremely complex taste spread rapidly across Zen's tongue. A mixture of different delicious flavors bombarded his taste buds. The pill was so good that it caused Zen's soul to tremble. He was simply unable to describe the taste, and could only lower his head to savor it. The moment he tasted it, he knew that he would remember it for the rest of his life, and never forget it. It was only then that he understood why Master Evil wanted him to come to the Brilliant Moon restaurant after he had entered the six-burden divine city. As the lifespan of these true gods in the divine land was limitless, they had a lot of time to study other things. In addition to the comprehension of the godly ways to the peak, they were also able to reach the pinnacle of other things such as eating. This made Zen have a new appreciation for the cultural inheritance in the divine land. On the top floor of the Brilliant Moon restaurant, Watts Han and Jimmy Han looked down at Zen with a strange expression on their faces. Intense curiosity developed in their heads as they witnessed Zen's actions. That person is less than 100 years old, but he is truly knowledgeable. He can even concoct an original pure food pill, Watts said in surprise. His eyes widened as he gawked at Zen. I don't know which senior he got the secret recipe from, but it was a splendid display. He's rather interesting. This year, Han Clan's examination attracts some strange people again, Jimmy said with a smile. The two brothers had represented the Han Clan as the manager of the Brilliant Moon restaurant for 3 divine eras. Countless customers had already visited the restaurant and the menu had changed from time to time. They had heard of the original pure food pill, but they had never seen it with their own eyes. Since they saw such an extraordinary recipe from a proving godly warrior, they were naturally confused. Should we bring in that fellow and ask him? Watts asked. His curiosity about the pill grew even stronger. No, this person will definitely take the Han Clan's exam. Then whether he's a dragon or a dog, we'll know when the time comes, Jimmy replied as he shook his head. Expectant eyes were on his face. Although the original pure food pill was truly magical, it could only satisfy one's appetite for a while. It was still not the right way in the eyes of some people. Everyone in the Brilliant Moon restaurant had their eyes fixed on Zen as they made all sorts of guesses about his identity. A bizarre range of speculations rose through the chatter of the customers. Eric stood formidably alone in the center of the patio. His eyes were still focused on Zen. Eric had appeared in a high-profile manner to show his might. The earlier encounter with the burly man was to exhibit his great strength and prowess. The examination of the heavenly Han house was difficult. The process not only involved strength but many other things as well. There were many variables, and it didn't necessarily mean that one could pass just because one was strong. As such, many warriors failed to be part of the Heavenly Han House. Eric originally thought that after he intimidated those martial artists, everyone would be afraid of him during the examination. As such, they wouldn't dare to act rashly against him. However, just after he won the match, everyone suddenly shifted their focus to the delicacies of the Brilliant Moon restaurant. Eric couldn't believe how easily his prestige was stolen. As he felt depressed, Eric pointed at Zen and shouted, "Hey! You!" Zen was still captivated about the aftertaste of the pill. Suddenly, he saw Eric point at him and shout loudly. Due to the interruption of his mood, Zen frowned and said with an annoyed tone, "What's the matter? How about I challenge you?" The corner of Eric's mouth curled up as he issued a challenge. He then continued, "If you won, these would be all yours." As he spoke, Eric's stare pointed at the divine might coins in front of his feet. Zen's eyes followed Eric's gaze. A cold smile came across Zen's face as he shook his head. "What do you mean? You don't dare? Are you a coward?" Eric felt unhappy and continued to provoke Zen. If Zen didn't agree to the challenge, then he really would have no way to deal with him. Even if he was a member of the Hulan clan, he couldn't act rashly in the six-burdened divine city. It was forbidden to attack anyone outside of a duel. If Eric were to break that rule, the punishment of the Thousand Commandments slate was very serious. Zen replied, "It's not that I don't dare, it's that those are not enough. You need much more than that to challenge me. You mean that these divine might coins are not enough? Ha ha, what a useless excuse." Eric's eyes lit up. Money didn't seem to be a problem for him. Zen nodded without a word. A mysterious aura still surrounded him as others silently watched the two warriors exchange words. However, with a wave of Eric's hand, another bunch of divine might coins fell from his hands. Heavy and blunt sounds echoed as 200 to 300 divine might coins hit the ground. Amazing. The Hulan clan is really rich. Eric is just a mere proving godly warrior, but he takes along so many divine might coins. This world is just too unfair. Many true gods have worked hard for so many divine eras, yet they still can't earn that much money. I think that fellow is probably just making an excuse. No matter how many more divine might coins Eric throws at him, he won't dare to accept the challenge. Maybe he's just afraid but can't admit that he's terrified of Eric. In everyone's eyes, Zen was totally no match for Eric. With his display of power before, Eric's brutality was deeply engraved to their minds. They thought that Zen just did not want to lose face. He only said that the money Eric had given him was not enough so that he wouldn't need to accept that he was weaker than Eric. However, Eric had thrown out more divine might coins again. The number of divine might coins in the patio was already about 600 or 700. The bystanders continued to ogle at the absurd amount of money on the ground. Everyone's gaze once again gathered on Zen as they waited for his reaction. However, Zen still shook his head, "Not enough." Eric didn't seem angry at all. He slapped his waist, and a spark of golden light flashed. A gold bracelet appeared in his hand. As he continuously shook the gold bracelet, divine might coins flew out from it. The people around them could not believe their eyes. Another 300 divine might coins fell to the patio. In a short while, the number of divine might coins in the patio reached 1,000. Everyone's gaze was once again fixed on the divine might coins. Such treasures were only to be looked at by them. 1,000 divine might coins. Many of the proving godly warriors were dumbfounded. Their hearts raced with the intense situation in front of them. Most likely, most mid-rank true gods only had that much money. To be able to throw away such a huge sum, Eric was envied by the warriors around him. Some of the elite members of the powerful clans also wanted to give it a try. They were quite confident of their battle prowess and such a huge amount of money would be useful to them. However, Eric wanted to challenge Zen, not them. Still not enough, Zen continued to shake his head as he poured himself a cup of wine. A callous look was on his face as he rejected the offer once more. At that moment, Eric was finally a bit annoyed. Zen had already rejected him several times. He glared at Zen and asked coldly, "Just how much is enough?" As he heard Eric's angry tone, Zen finally smiled. That was what he had hoped to hear. He knew that not only were there matches in the Brilliant Moon restaurant, there was also gambling. It was a good way for him to earn some money. However, he also knew that he only had one chance. Once he won, most likely no idiot would be so stupid as to give him the divine might coins for free again. As he saw an opportunity to earn as many divine might coins as he could, Zen meticulously incited Eric's attention. Previously, Zen didn't want to challenge Eric. He indeed felt that the number of divine might coins was not enough. 200 was not enough. Even the 1000 divine might coins were still not enough. Zen wanted an opportunity to get as much as he needed. He didn't expect that the fellow from the Hulan clan would be so impetuous. As such, the opportunity to earn a huge sum appeared in front of Zen rather quickly. This much. Zen held out 5 fingers and said calmly. An arrogant smile came across his face. 5,000 divine might coins? Eric asked as he frowned. The corner of Zen's mouth curled up slightly. That's right. 5,000. That fellow is really arrogant. That's way too much. Maybe he purposely said a big number. He is making it difficult for Eric. I'm afraid that guy doesn't really want to accept the challenge. What a coward. Unfortunately, he might have underestimated the Hulan clan's wealth. 5,000 divine might coins is indeed a huge amount of money, but for the Hulan clan, it's not a big problem. As expected, Eric was deep in thought for a moment. After a few seconds, he looked at Zen and smiled coldly. Then with a prideful tone, he said, 5,000 it is. With that, Eric raised his head and shouted towards the 4th floor, Uncle Lambert. Chapter 1768. With only one hit. As soon as Eric finished speaking, a bald man with a strange pattern on his brain stuck his head out from the 4th floor. It was Lambert, the man Eric had spoken to. Young master, Lambert bowed in respect. Give me the money, Eric said calmly. But, Lambert glanced at Zen. He was a low-rank true god at the top level, much more powerful than ordinary true gods. It was not that he didn't believe in Eric's strength, but was it really wise to take out 5,000 divine might coins at once? After all, 5,000 divine might coins was an insanely huge amount of money. Moreover, Lambert couldn't shake the feeling that Zen was much more than he let on. Although Zen was extremely reserved, Lambert could still feel a faintly discernible soul aura coming from him. It was like an unseen double-edged sword, vague and powerful. What? Eric asked as he looked at his servant. Perplexed, Lambert frowned. Even though he was a true god, he was still just a guard of the Hulan clan. He'd been serving the young master for years, and therefore knew his temper better than anyone. Right now, Eric had already figured that this warrior had a lot of pride and wouldn't fight. And since he had already thrown the 1,000 divine might coins, giving up now was out of the question. If Lambert upset the young master here, he would surely get punished later. Having no choice, Lambert could only grit his teeth as he summoned a small gold silk pouch with a clap of his hands and lightly tossed it to Eric. Eric caught the pouch and turned to smile at Zen. He gently twisted his fingers and untied the pouch. Pock, pock, pock. Instead of metal, the divine might coins were made of some kind of wood and made a crisp sound when they landed on the ground. Now, Eric had a total of 5,000 divine might coins under his feet. Oh my goodness, it's 5,000 divine might coins. For many third-tier clans, this is a huge sum of money. He is so confident in his strength. Let's see what the poor guy is going to do to save his face. The people surrounding them all focused on Zen. It was Zen himself who had asked for 5,000 divine might coins, and now that Eric had actually taken it out, everyone wondered just how Zen would escape the fight. But what they didn't know was that Zen had already thought of a way out of all possible scenarios before he opened his mouth. He first asked Master Evil about Eric's family. He learned that the Hulan clan was a second-tier clan in the 36 regions, and was considered a huge power to ordinary true gods. He also learned that they had a good relationship with the Han clan. However, even the Hulan clan couldn't be autocratic in the six-burden divine city. Even if Zen offended the clan, he'd still be safe in the city. Plus, the Han clan had always been strict with the clan's jurisdiction. After Zen joined the Heavenly Han house, they had no way to deal with him. Moreover, even though 5,000 divine might coins was not a small amount, it would only be a small loss for the Hulan clan. After weighing the risks, Zen had asked to raise the stake to 5,000 divine might coins. He had decided that 5,000 was the most suitable amount. If he asked for a larger number, Eric might not be able to offer it. Here is 5,000 divine might coins. Eric sneered. Don't even dare to fool me. I'm sure you're aware of the consequences of doing so. Deep inside, he wanted to hear what excuses Zen had come up with. Everyone else also felt the same. They were curious if Zen would really dare to fight. Zen slowly stood from his seat. And just as he started to walk away, the girl who served him earlier rushed up and stopped him. Wait a minute. What's wrong? Zen asked, surprised. You should pay the bill first, she said stubbornly. She feared Zen would get killed and his bill would be left unpaid. Zen smiled helplessly at the stubborn look in the girl's eyes. Sorry, Please wait a moment, he told Eric apologetically as he took out some divine might coins and paid his bill. After the girl had left, Zen held a divine might coin in his hand. He smiled at Eric. If you lose, you can't welsh on the bet. You're delirious if you think I'm backing out, Eric said coldly. Zen smiled and threw the divine might coin into the air. I accept your challenge. Zoom. As soon as the words left his mouth, the divine might coin stopped midair and shot up into the sky with one of the divine might coins Eric had thrown earlier. As a result, the restrictions of the 1,000 Commandments slate in the 6-bird and divine city were lifted temporarily. The instant the divine might coins flew upward, Zen cocked one eyebrow and his eyes flashed with a golden light. A stream of his powerful soul shot towards Eric. At the same time, Zen himself dashed towards Eric like an arrow. Watch out, Lambert yelled. Even though Zen had only released a small part of his soul pressure, Lambert was still able to feel how terrifying that power was. Zen's attack had caught Eric off guard. And although his reaction was fast, Zen's attack had still managed to hit Eric and pierce part of his soul. The pain was unbearable, but before Eric could even cry out, Zen had already slammed into him. It was like a mountain was falling on him. He wanted to cry out in pain, but because of Zen's crushing weight, Eric could only let out a muffled groan before he lost consciousness. Crash, crack, Eric was thrown backwards, smashing tables and chairs along the way. Some of the proving godly warriors watching their fight were caught and injured as well. For a moment, the entire first floor of the Brilliant Moon restaurant was in chaos. Eric lay unmoving on the ground, limbs bent at unnatural angles. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Suddenly, the entire Brilliant Moon restaurant fell silent. All of them had been surprised when Zen readily accepted Eric's challenge. However, most of them thought that Zen was only trying to assert himself and would eventually end up dead by Eric's hand. None of them had imagined the battle to end like this. Zen had defeated his opponent with only one hit. In one corner, the server girl covered her mouth with a shaking hand as she stared wide-eyed at the young man in front of her. Although she was only a divine citizen, she had worked in the Brilliant Moon restaurant for a long time and had witnessed countless fights before. However, she couldn't remember a lot of people who defeated their opponents with a single hit like Zen did. This only happened when the fight happened between two warriors with great gaps in strength and cultivation levels. However, Zen was a proving godly warrior while Eric was a powerful warrior from the famous Hulan clan, so the girl couldn't understand why the outcome was like this. Zen smirked and took out the great weighty sword from his waist. He pulled out the scabbard and began to collect the divine might coins on the ground. When he entered the divine land, Zen's space ring had been destroyed, but the great weighty sword and the sword scabbard were made of divine land items so they remained intact. Now, Zen used the sword scabbard, which was originally a Sumeru space, in place of the space ring. As Zen was taking the divine might coins, several people led by Lambert of the Hulan clan jumped down from the 4th floor of the Brilliant Moon restaurant. Are you really going to take these divine might coins? Lambert asked with a frown. Zen straightened his body and asked with a smile, why not? Aren't you afraid of offending our Hulan clan? Lambert had become suspicious of Zen's real identity after witnessing his strength. And was now asking Zen these questions in an effort to sound out his background. But Zen had already figured out his intentions. He looked into his eyes fearlessly. Why should I be afraid? Chapter 1769, Zen's information. Zen's rhetorical question caught Lambert by surprise. Lambert stared coldly at Zen and asked, which clan do you come from? Zen smiled. Why should I tell you? Lambert knew this tactic as a swift and decisive person. Zen answered himself with 3 words in a row. He already realized that threats were useless against Zen. After all, Zen was a very fearless person. But as a guard of the Hulan clan, Lambert had to be observant and smart. Since Eric had lost 5,000 divine might coins, he would not refuse to give them to Zen under the watchful eyes of the people. After all, there still happened to be the elders of the other clans on the 5th and 6th floors of the Brilliant Moon restaurant. Without looking back, Lambert walked up towards the other side. Meanwhile, the 2 servants of the Hulan clan had already helped Eric up. Lambert reached out his hand and gently pointed at Eric's forehead. Just then, a powerful ray of light coruscated from between Eric's eyebrows. His mind was just put at rest. Eric suffered a great amount of bone damage after Zen's hit. However, it was common knowledge that physical injuries were easiest to heal, taking around 2 to 3 days to recover. This was supposed to be no hindrance to his test of the heavenly Han house. What worried Lambert the most was Eric's soul because he did not dare to underestimate Zen's power. Fortunately, only a small hole was found on Eric's soul, so it was not really something to worry about. It seemed that Zen had been lenient on him, but Lambert still sighed in his heart. It was hard for him to imagine how a proving godly warrior could cultivate his soul to such a state. After collecting all the divine might coins on the ground, Zen cupped his hands in salute towards Lambert and the others. Then, as if there was no one else present, he walked out of Brilliant Moon Restaurant with his head held high. Gasps and whispers filled the restaurant once Zen exited. Who was that man? Well, he used the food in the restaurant to refine a food pill, so he should be a citizen of Six Burden Divine City, right? That's not even the point. I just wonder how he became so strong. He defeated Eric with only one move. It seems that he even played it easy on him. Eric would have been dead if he went all out. These people continuously wondered but had no clue that Zen was more powerful than anything they could ever imagine. On the other hand, Eric was just an elite disciple from a second-tier clan. Even the proving godly warriors who were trained by the influential clans on the floating islands were no match for Zen. Eric didn't stand a chance. Due to the special nature of Zen's inner world, he had not managed to condense the godly tile. But once he successfully condensed the godly tile, his strength would be enhanced by millions. By then, ordinary low-rank true gods would find it nearly impossible to defeat him. In a strange room found on the 5th floor, an old man stretched out his hands and gracefully waved them in the air. A fire began to slowly emit between his hands. This fire wrapped around something that was constantly burning, emitting a faint and peculiar fragrance. Clang! As the sound echoed, a light yellow pill fell out from the fire. It slowly rolled about in the golden plate, emitting a buzzing sound. Once the pill appeared, a strange odor quickly lingered within the room. Afterwards, the old man gently pushed the plate to the other side of the table. "Please enjoy it," he said. Across the table was a girl dressed in green. She smiled and responded, "It smells so good. Thank you, Grandpa Bruce." Within seconds, the girl put the pill into her mouth and swallowed. An intoxicated expression immediately plastered across her face. The food pill that the old man refined was similar to the one Zen did. It was known as the original pure food pill. Very few people knew how to refine the original pure food pills, and most of them were the old true gods. Bruce, who was one of them, having refined pills for many years now. After the girl swallowed the pill, Bruce said in a hoarse voice, "At such a young age, that man has already known how to refine original pure food pills. His soul and strength are exceptionally strong. I wonder what kind of godly way he is cultivating. He managed to defeat Eric with a single move. It was not even a defeat." The girl shook her head. It was a one-hit kill. For sure, Zen had the ability to kill Eric with one move, but for some reason, he had shown mercy at the last possible second. Anyone who had seen Zen could easily see that. "Right, he could have killed Eric just like that," said Bruce. "We can't underestimate him. Miss, we need to investigate his origin." The green-clothed girl smiled. "At this point, investigation is necessary. I understand that his past must be very interesting, too." "Excuse me, miss," Bruce said as he snapped his fingers to her face, "you and that guy are not the same kind of person. Don't be attracted by him." His eyebrows rose in concern. She furrowed her eyebrows and chided, "Grandpa Bruce, what are you talking about? I don't like him." "I know you well," Bruce chuckled, "and I know exactly what you're thinking about." The girl gave him a glare, not saying another word. Aside from this room, other rooms on the upper floors were discussing and debating Zen's identity and background. Zen had come from Mirror City and hadn't introduced himself. No matter how much they discussed, he would remain a mystery to all of them. At this point, they could only anticipate his test of the Heavenly Han House, and they believed that they would know that day. After Zen left the Brilliant Moon Restaurant, he strolled leisurely through the streets of Six Burden Divine City. He spent a lot at the Brilliant Moon Restaurant, but did not expect to receive 5,000 Divine Might coins right after. The impulsiveness of Eric brought him those coins so effortlessly. Unfortunately, he knew that this was just a one-shot deal. The next time, he probably wouldn't be so lucky. There were only 6 or 7 days left before the test of Heavenly Han House, so Zen had to gather some information in Six Burden Divine City. He mastered the disguise technique quite well from Master Evil, but it proved to be very strange. It was not about making a human skin mask, or changing the face of a stranger as normal people would do. The technique of Master Evil was a method of cultivation, as well as a method of body refining. However, it didn't aim to train one's strength or body, but rather, to train the muscles on one's face. As he continued to practice this technique, every muscle on his face would move, thus allowing him to change his appearance completely. In this way, others wouldn't feel too shocked when they saw Zen. However, people could recognize him based on the memories of the past few days. They just felt that Zen was a bit unfamiliar. Zen's face kept changing when he trained his muscles to a certain extent. This way, even if he went to the floating island of the Han clan, the two sisters who saw him in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land and other members of the Han clan wouldn't be able to recognize him at all. In addition to the disguise technique, Zen also wanted to expand his inner world and practice his martial arts skills to a greater extent. After he became a world lord in the universe, many of the martial arts that he cultivated in the past became useless. However, it was a different case in the Divine Land. Because they were unable to fly in the air, they had to fight hand to hand. In other words, the basic martial skills played an important role. Now, Zen had to be very careful when using chaotic energy. He didn't dare to use the emotion-closing godly way as it was classified forbidden in the Divine Land. If he was caught using it, he would get into a lot of trouble. Zen didn't use his trump cards now, but he was still full of confidence nonetheless. According to Master Evil's analysis, as one of the three great clans under the rule of the Han clan, the Hulan clan was quite powerful. Eric was from this clan, and was renowned one of the best warriors they had to offer. But since Eric proved to be powerless against Zen, the disciples of the other clans would be even less likely to fight back. Although there might be a few strong competitors, Heavenly Han House offered at least 10 spots. Given his abilities, Zen would not fall out of the top 10. Therefore, he had a sure spot in the Heavenly Han House. Before the test, many clans would order their men to gather information about their competitors in Six Burden Divine City for a competitive advantage. Therefore, everyone was more or less knowledgeable of the potential competitors. A group of people spent their lives collecting such information and selling it to the great clans and sects as a business. The information included the characteristics, strength and specialties of the competing martial artists. Even their godly ways and cultivation methods were also recorded. Notably, after his fight with Eric, Zen was honorably ranked at the 4th place. But for some reason, his information was completely different from that of the others. His basic information was all unknown and difficult to discover. The only thing that had been acknowledged was his strength. His fight with Eric had been briefly described. With a tremendous power, he had defeated Eric in one simple, drastic move. Chapter 1770, The Money Alley. Zen was highly irritated. Over the past few days, there were always people who sneakily followed him no matter where he went. Although those people hid well, Zen could still detect their presence. Then again, he didn't need to bother with them as it was very safe in the Six Burden Divine City. He shifted his focus back to his priority, which was to get some essential items such as the space ring that could store things. He had been using the sword sheath as a substitute for a while now, but he found that it wasn't very convenient at all. Now that Zen had earned 5,000 Divine Might coins in one go, he could buy anything he wanted. After a few moments under the guidance of Master Evil, Zen had crossed more than half of the Six Burden Divine City and had now arrived at a small alley. Money alley, you mean here? Asked Zen, his face twisted into an unreadable expression as he stood in front of the alley. The pathway was very narrow and could allow only one person to pass through, and from the outside, it looked rather plain and even shabby. Hee, of course this is the place. The Money Alley is very famous in the Six Burden Divine City. As long as you have the Divine Might coins, you can buy any strange things that you could imagine, Master Evil said with a smile. But why people like to come to this narrow alley? Clearly, the alley's appearance confused Zen. Suddenly, Zen heard a loud, rough voice behind him that sounded like rocks that were rubbed against each other. Get out of the way. Zen quickly dodged to the side and turned around, only to see a group of about 7 people who walked towards the Money Alley. The owner of the voice was a fat guy at the forefront of the group. His body's girth was equivalent to his height, which made him look like a ball. When Zen saw him, his eyes flashed in realization. A mid-rank true god. Zen had seen quite a lot of true gods after he came out of the evolutionary universe, but the majority of them were only low-rank true gods. The only mid-rank true gods he knew were Master Evil, Wayne, Yorick, and a few others. There was a time when he had asked Master Evil why there were only a few mid-rank true gods. And since Master Evil had always answered Zen's questions, he naturally indulged him. The Divine Land was an extremely stable world, completely different from the environments in any universe. Incidents rarely happened in such a world, and there were rarely any talents or unique beings who could change the world. It was safe to say that the vast majority of the divine citizens did not have very long-term aspirations. Even if they did become true gods, it would be very hard for them to become mainstream powerful masters, and it was even less possible for them to achieve the consummation of true gods, and even more unlikely for them to become holy beings. In other words, the paths for lower-level martial artists to advance to achieve higher levels were completely blocked. The martial artists in the evolutionary universe are like water. Of course, strong martial artists would fall from their positions if they don't work hard. Even if they don't fall, they will die from the depletion of their lifespan, and eventually lose their positions to others. Supreme Lords are no exception. Thus, the weaker ones work hard to achieve higher status. On the other hand, the true gods in the divine land are like mountains, they cannot flow, but their lifespans are infinite. The strong ones are always strong. When they have occupied all the seats of power, the lower-level martial artists would have no more chances to move up. No matter how hard the divine citizens work, it would simply be futile. This is the so-called social immobility. Master Evil explained. A sigh escaped Zen's lips when Master Evil had finished. He didn't expect that Master Evil had a thorough view towards the matters of the world and had come to such a conclusion about the divine land. Then again, it did explain why there were so few mid-rank true gods. It was also no wonder that Yorick was willing to lurk in the Misty Mountain village for 7 divine eras and wait for Master Evil's return, all for a stone mouse. After all, the stone mouse symbolized hope. Neither Yorick nor Master Evil aspired to become holy beings, they even didn't hold any hopes of reaching the consummation of true gods. All they wanted to do was to improve further by breaking through in the level of mid-rank true gods and become top-rank true gods. These two true gods had risked their lives in hopes of advancing a little further, and it was clear how difficult it was for warriors in the divine land to break through. The round-bodied warrior glanced briefly at Zen before he squeezed into the narrow passageway of the money alley. His body was much wider than the skinny path, but he forced his way in with all his might. Once he had successfully got in, he disappeared into thin air. The few people behind him followed suit as well and disappeared from Zen's sight. So there's another world in this money alley. Zen exclaimed at this revelation and he, too, stepped into the money alley. The moment he set foot into the narrow passage, ripples of water flashed in front of his eyes. It looked like the space itself had been distorted. The area in front of him suddenly became spacious, as if he had arrived in another world. He was now face to face with a broad street. On both sides of the street were rows of stalls that were lined in an orderly fashion. Many true gods slowly trickled through the street, which made the place look like a market in the mortal world. Wow, there are so many true gods, Zen said in a daze. He hadn't seen so many true gods in the six-burden divine city. Most of warriors in the city were proving godly warriors, which did not seem to match the place's name, which was Divine City. Now, he had never expected that so many true gods actually gathered in the money alley. Just as Zen stepped forward, one of the city guards rushed towards him and asked, "Do you have anything to sell?" Zen shook his head in response and said, "I'm here to buy something." The guard nodded in understanding and stepped aside. Needless to say, the guard's chipper attitude bewildered him. Why are the guards of the six-burden divine city so enthusiastic? Zen asked Master Evil curiously. Master Evil chuckled then said, "Yes. There are actually several entrances to this money alley. Most true gods who have returned to the six-burden divine city come here to sell what they have obtained from other places. On the other hand, the shops outside the divine cities are mainly targeted towards the warriors and divine citizens below the level of true gods. If a true god wants to set up a stall in the money alley, they will have to pay a fee and an additional which is a certain percentage of the fee. The latter is actually tax payment, so the guards would naturally be very enthusiastic. Even true gods have to pay taxes, Zen muttered with wide eyes. It was unbelievable. It reminded him of a book he had once read in the eastern region. There was a passage in the book that said death and tax revenues could not be avoided. Even the true gods who had escaped death and obtained eternal life still had to pay taxes. His legs continued to take him forward as he let his thoughts wander. Most of the people on the street were low-rank true gods, and there were a very small number of mid-rank true gods. There wasn't a lot of proving godly warriors, and even if there were some, they were accompanied by true gods. They were clearly disciples from some large clans. As Zen walked down some more, he saw that the shops on both sides of the street were filled with plenty of goods. They sold so many different types of items that he couldn't even name most of them. A great number of the stalls were owned by true gods. Some of them were very enthusiastic towards their customers, while others were quite silent. Those quiet ones simply placed the items they sold on the stall and sat on the side, their eyes closed in contemplation. This heavenly spirit root was unearthed 3 divine eras ago. It's only for 20 divine might coins. At that moment, a certain seller's voice caught Zen's ears. Zen immediately turned and saw a section of shiny wood in the stall on the left. The piece of wood was crisscrossed like a catapult and its surface glowed jade green. It was indeed quite eye-catching. "Hey, man, are you interested?" The stall owner was also a low-rank true god and didn't seem to mind Zen's identity as a proving godly warrior, as seen in his friendly disposition towards Zen. He went closer to the stall and examined the shiny piece of glowing wood. "What is this?" Zen asked curiously. "Haven't you heard of the heavenly spirit root? It is something that can increase one's talent. It can be swallowed directly, or it can be refined into a heavenly spirit pill. After one takes it, their mind would become clear and their comprehension will soar," the true god said as he smiled, his eyes both shaped like upturned crescents. However, Zen remained silent as Master Evil quickly said in his mind, "It's fake. Not even 200 divine might coins would get you a genuine heaven spirit root, much less 20. Once Master Evil had finished, Zen turned around and left without a word. "Hey, man, don't go," the true god helplessly shouted a few more times. He could only sigh. It was truly harder and harder to deceive younger people these days, he thought. Meanwhile, Zen continued his stroll as his eyes wandered about. Just then, a ray of light burst out from somewhere, and he quickly followed where it was. It led him to a shop with several brocade boxes. The brocade box on the outermost was already opened, and inside it was a golden Sanskrit word. There were small densely packed characters around the Sanskrit word, which turned out to be notes that explained the Sanskrit word. Chapter 1771, A Piece of Mud. Zen did not expect to see golden Sanskrit words in the money alley of all places. What was more shocking was that they were actual, real Sanskrit words. Zen was certain since there was no way to fake the genuine auras they exuded. The stall owner was a sleeping old man in plain clothes. He was a low-rank true god and seemed completely indifferent to his surroundings. "Can the Sanskrit words be sold?" Zen asked in his mind. "Why do you ask? Sanskrit words are normal commodities here in the divine land. Of course they can be traded," Master Evil said in response. But it didn't really sit right with Zen. To him, every single Sanskrit word was filled with extremely rich meaning. If he could decipher just one word, then he was bound to benefit greatly from it. The old man's stall was densely packed with over 100 brocade boxes, so did that mean there were over 100 Sanskrit words here? Look at the Sanskrit word in your hand. This is the very first word Holy Waldo discovered years ago and its meaning has long been comprehended by hundreds of people. It has been widely spread all throughout the divine land. What's so great about it? Master Evil said, trying to convince Zen of the lightness of the matter. The other words in this stall have most probably already been seen by so many people. They're not that special. The discovery of the first golden Sanskrit word had left a profound impact on the divine land, causing a frenzy of divine citizens to search for other Sanskrit words all over the land. Each discovered word was then copied countless times. This led to the widespread circulation of the early discovered Sanskrit words. That first batch spanned roughly around 90 words that many talented individuals translated and deciphered. These Sanskrit words were by no means rare, and since this old man dared sell them, he must have obtained new understandings and explanations for these words. If it's a new Sanskrit word, never seen before yet readable, then that word's value would be extremely terrifying. That type of Sanskrit word would greatly alarm the wealthy clans on the floating islands. That kind of precious Sanskrit word could never be sold here, Master Evil added. What do you mean the value would be extremely terrifying? Zen asked, his heart skipping a beat by Master Evil's words. Back in the fairy palace, Jeffrey had managed to read the Sanskrit words in the library. Zen hadn't yet realized the value of these words, and Immortal book had told him that he'd only understand once he reached the divine land. It was true. He only realized what Immortal book meant now that he was here, in front of a stall selling Sanskrit words. All the holy beings have their own methods in digging out the Sanskrit words, but only around 20% have been interpreted. I've been imprisoned for 7 divine eras, so that may have changed. Some Sanskrit words may have been interpreted by now, I can't be too sure. All I know is that those wealthy clans are very protective of the Sanskrit words they've interpreted. A divine citizen once managed to interpret 3 Sanskrit words, which led to fighting among 6 of the wealthy clans. The price they offered for those words was something that even top-ranked true gods would yearn for, Master Evil explained. So that's how it is. Zen nodded silently. He hadn't thought too much of it when Jeffrey displayed such a talent, but it seemed that a skill like that was of the utmost importance here in the divine land. The old man noticed Zen standing in front of his stall, deep in thought and not moving at all. He opened his previously half-lidded eyes and glanced at the young man indifferently. Hey, kid, you want some Sanskrit words? I've put my own hard work and notes in them. They're worth looking at, I assure you. Only 10 divine might coins for a word. Zen smiled before shaking his head. No thank you. Despite his interest, these Sanskrit words were of little use to him right now. Moreover, not every word was valuable. Just like the grand weapon refining method, the kind of word he wanted was the type that had never been passed around in the divine land, which meant it would be difficult to buy no matter how much money one was willing to offer. The old man glared at Zen before going back to sleep. Zen then decided to look through the stalls one by one and was greatly amused by the number of strange things he saw. For example, one stall was selling sparkling godly tiles that looked like translucent gems and emitted rays of gentle light. The blue godly tile contained a kind of powerful, icy power while the red held some kind of strange, flickering flame. The black godly tile was intriguing since it contained some kind of unique law. To divine citizens, a godly tile was an opportunity to prove the godly way. Some wealthy proving godly warriors who were desperate to prove the godly way would often choose to buy a godly tile to place in their inner world. Such a method was fast and could give a warrior eternal life. However, it wasn't the kind of route many chose unless absolutely necessary. The main reason was that these godly tiles were brought over from other true gods. If placed in another warrior's inner world, the foreign godly tile would be excluded and rejected, which meant they could neither be enhanced nor have their cultivation level raised. Despite the cheap pricing of the godly tiles, Zen simply walked away from the stall. After wandering around, Zen finally managed to find what he actually needed, a space ring. The stall owner, seeing Zen's identity, raised the price to 10 divine might coins. Thankfully, Master Evil was there to tell him that the price being offered was too high, so Zen was able to bargain with the stall owner and reduce the 10 divine might coins down to 5. He didn't want to spend too much since the space ring was only going to be used as temporary storage. As he picked the space ring up, Zen suddenly felt his elixir field tremble. The inner world within his elixir field seemed to have undergone a slight change, as if it was telling Zen that it was feeling extremely hungry. A world, as confirmed by Zen long ago, had its own consciousness. However, this consciousness did not come from the owner. For example, the consciousness of the evolutionary universe was not from his father, Mike, but from the collated individual consciousness of each creature that lived and died within it. He hadn't felt his inner world's consciousness once since he stepped into the Soul Sea realm. This was the very first time he did so. Zen frowned, not quite understanding why such a thought was transmitted from his elixir field. However, before he could think about it any further, the consciousness reminded Zen to turn his head. He immediately conceded and found himself face to face with another stall. The owner was a young girl who wore an orange dress. She was very pretty, and looked around 16 to 17 years old. Zen knew though that it was impossible to judge one's age just by their appearance. His gaze shifted from the owner to an item she was selling. A number of strange things lined the stall, most of which Zen did not even recognize. However, one object caught his eye. It was at the edge of the stall, an unremarkable piece of mud, covered in dust. The girl smiled sweetly at Zen. Is there anything you wish to buy? What did you take a fancy to? Master Evil also asked. There didn't seem to be anything of value in this stall, but he could clearly feel the tremble in Zen's soul. Whatever it was that he saw seemed to be extremely important. Zen did not answer either of them and simply continued to stare at that lump of brown mud. At that moment, the consciousness that had come out from his elixir field suddenly wrestled Zen's own consciousness and took control of his body. Pretty soon, the young man found himself moving towards that piece of mud. This only lasted for a moment. A glint flashed across Zen's eyes as he immediately suppressed his inner world's consciousness, halting his footsteps. However, he still stared at that lump of mud. Chapter 1772, Sky-High Price. The consciousness of Zen's inner world was soon suppressed by Zen. Despite having done so, the surging waves of consciousness continued to spread out, constantly reminding Zen that this item was more than just important. As Zen was the creator of this world, this consciousness also belonged to Zen, and such waves simply couldn't resist him. In the past, while Master Evil was communicating with Zen, he had warned him that an inner world's consciousness wasn't necessarily entirely safe. If he was careless, such consciousness might even occupy his body. There had once been true gods who had neglected to monitor and manage their own inner worlds. Within such inner worlds were born very ambitious secondary creatures. Through the method of controlling the godly tile, these creatures succeeded in destroying the true god's soul. Luckily enough for the true gods, only the secondary creatures from a holy being's inner world could actually comprehend the godly way and eventually escape. Although the aforementioned secondary creatures obtained the bodies of those gods of creation through the godly tile, they remained confined within their inner worlds, without possibility of ever entering the divine land. In other words, these true gods all became walking corpses. During the period of time that Zen's cinnabar field had been sealed, a creature like these had equally appeared, Evil God. If Zen hadn't interfered, it was very likely that Evil God would have been able to do this to Zen, as well. After being suppressed by Zen though, Evil God became much quieter. Now that the entire inner world was suddenly so intrigued by the piece of mud, there was no way Zen was going to ignore it. Let me see, Zen replied calmly to the little girl. In his mind, he was wondering something completely different. Don't you know that piece of mud? He asked Master Evil in his mind. Mud. Master Evil was startled slightly before taking notice of the brown-colored mud. He hesitated silently for a few seconds before muttering, "This mud seems to be familiar. It could be brown cloud mud, and it also appears to be." No. That's. In Zen's eyes, Master Evil was an extremely knowledgeable person that had a very deep understanding of the divine land. After dawdling for a while, he finally provided an answer that made Zen feel faint. That's an ordinary piece of mud. Zen was speechless. There had to be a reason why this mud was causing such agitation within his inner world. There was no way he would believe that it was only an ordinary piece of mud. His only option now was to ask the stall owner. Thus, Zen carelessly zipped left and right in front of the stall. He focused his gaze on the said piece of mud and asked, "May I ask why this piece of mud is being sold here?" The little girl blinked her eyes a few times, covered her mouth and giggled. "This piece of mud is a treasure," she said. A treasure? Zen felt disbelief and his face revealed a puzzled expression. If this piece of mud was such a treasure as she had said, then why did she throw it to the side so casually? Of course, Zen wasn't naive, and there was no way he was going to believe that, either. When the little girl noticed that Zen didn't believe her in the least, she continued in a clear, confident voice, "It's true. When we dug this piece of mud out 20 years ago, there was a towering tree growing atop it. That tree was way over 1,000 feet tall and was about to pierce through the sky." The little girl gestured upward with her hand as she spoke. Scientifically speaking, it was impossible that the tree was about to pierce through the sky. The divine land's sky was unimaginably high, not to mention that a tree 1,000 feet tall was not very high at all. In fact, there were countless trees that reached tens of thousands of feet in the air all across the swirl forest. Still focusing on Zen's expression, the little girl pursed her lips and said, "There are golden apricot trees planted on the hillside. It's already impressive when an ordinary golden apricot tree grows to a height of 20 or 30 feet, but the golden apricot trees on that hillside are all extremely tall. Many people have said over the years that there must be something spiritual at the bottom of the hill, so our Thai clan sent people to dig it out. We didn't expect this piece of mud to pop out after we had spent so much time there digging. At the time, this piece of mud even took on a human form and attempted an escape. It was extremely fast. Luckily, my uncle Alfred was there and he caught the mud before it could go anywhere." The Thai clan was a small clan in the Six Burden region. They were much stronger than the Misty Mountain village, but despite that, they still weren't strong enough to be considered among the third-tier clans. Human form, escape, this mud must really have spirituality then. Zen nodded in agreement, somewhat surprised. "That's right. And my uncle was so happy and pretty proud, too," the little girl added as she laughed. "But I guess after being bound by my uncle, this piece of mud seemed to have lost its spirituality, and later on, it became like this." As it turned out, after the Thai clan had obtained this piece of mud and controlled it, they had self-proclaimed it to be an incredible treasure. Throughout all the divine land, many spiritual objects existed. Time here was endless and as a result, bizarre things would appear every now and again. Time could give many things a spiritual sense, but a piece of mud that had spirituality was extremely rare, to say the least. After obtaining the piece of mud, the Thai clan had secretly and carefully studied it for a long time. Despite having been doing so, they couldn't find anything special about the said piece of mud. It literally was just as Master Evil had said, an absolutely ordinary piece of mud. Of course, the members of the Thai clan were naturally all upset, but after studying it for more than 10 years, they eventually gave up. They firmly believed that this thing was far from ordinary though, and took it to the Six Burden Divine City. Here, they found a few true gods with incredibly keen eyesight to verify the mud. Upon seeing the mud, the first words uttered by the true gods were, "What is this?" Did your Thai clan go mad from poverty and use a piece of the mud dug out from the ground to fool us? In a fit of anger, the Thai clan's leader left the mud to this little girl in the money alley. The Thai clan rented a stall in the money alley. It was run by the daughter of the Thai clan's leader, a little girl named Lin Thai. Over the past 2 years, many true gods had noticed this piece of mud. After all, it was quite unusual to find an ordinary mud for sale in Money Alley. If it was really a piece of ordinary mud, why would the stall owner bother to let it occupy a pot in the stall, they all wondered. Whenever someone asked, Lin would tell them this same story. With her numerously told story, many people became quite interested in the piece of mud. After all, there would always be people willing to spend a little money to buy an opportunity. What if this mud really was a treasure? How could they know without getting their hands on it first? However, when they heard the little Lin's price, the interested true gods became so angered that they glared at her and cursed her loudly for being crazy. It turned out that Lin was asking for 500 divine mite coins. These true gods were only a little interested in this piece of mud. And even if this mud had been a necessity, most true gods wouldn't have been able to afford it. In other words, they would only be willing to pay 1 or 2 divine mite coins for it. In fact, even the members of the Thai clan stopped taking the piece of mud seriously. They all simply agreed to leave it here for Lin to sell, as long as it could eventually be sold. In all honesty, they couldn't care any less about the price of the mud. After all, what could an ordinary piece of mud be worth, anyway? This stall in the money alley was very important for the Thai clan though. Lin was capable of taking on such heavy responsibility at a young age precisely because she was very smart and a born leader. And yet, she persisted in selling this piece of mud at a terribly high price, and thus, the piece had been there for several years already. Up until today, no one had really cared for it or even paid any attention to it. When Zen asked about the piece of mud today, Lin told him the story vividly. At the same time, she smiled at him and asked, "Are you interested in buying this piece of mud?" This little girl looked to be quite a tender age, but she was very discerning. When she first saw Zen wandering around, she felt him rather unnatural. His gaze landed on the piece of mud, as if he could see its peculiarity. Shortly after, she noticed Zen looking around her stall. In her young heart, Lin laughed. This fellow was clearly very interested in this piece of mud, and yet he had to pretend not to be. She had a faint premonition that she would finally succeed in selling this piece of mud to Zen, and that, at a high price today. Unfortunately for her, Zen appeared to be nothing more than a proving godly warrior. Although he looked decent, he also looked a bit poor. She even caught herself wondering whether or not he would even have enough divine mite coins to pay for it. "How much are you asking for this piece of mud?" Zen asked, casually. He obviously wasn't clear on what this little girl was thinking about, but she had seen straight through his every move. The little girl smiled and silently extended 5 fingers. 5 divine mite coins? Zen asked, feeling relieved. Regardless of whether or not this mud was useful, Zen had to have it. If this girl had been asking for a high price, things wouldn't have gone well. To his question, the girl shook her head. 50, Zen asked again, his heart already climbing up his throat. 50 divine mite coins was already getting a little steep. Even for a warrior born into one of the greatest clans, it would be quite difficult for them to be capable of affording it. And yet, shockingly enough, the little girl still shook her head once again, this time revealing her silver teeth as she sweetly smiled and said, 500 divine mite coins. What clan does this girl belong to? Is she out of her mind? Master Evil said in Zen's mind. Before Zen could say anything aloud, Master Evil's voice was heard cursing in his mind. In Master Evil's eyes, the piece of mud was worthless. Despite that though, Zen had a few secrets that Master Evil wasn't aware of, and perhaps Zen could really see the value of the mud. Never had he imagined that this young girl would have an asking price 500 divine mite coins. Now that was not only daring, but outrageous, too. And upon hearing Lin's price, Zen couldn't help but frown in an instant. Simultaneously though, he noted a trace of slyness on the girl's fair face. He was in a dilemma now, for he couldn't figure out the value of the piece of mud, but his need of it came from the consciousness of his inner world. Chapter 1773, Deal. Zen felt a headache coming on. He was not good at putting on airs, and what was worse, he had let this little girl see through him. "This price isn't for you alone," Lin said. "In the past few years, I told anyone who asked about the price of this mud the same thing, that it was priced at 500 divine mite coins. But I feel that it is more appropriate to ask you for 1,000 divine mite coins. I know you know the value of this mud." Lin was speaking the truth. She knew this piece of mud was extraordinary, but what made it special, she didn't know. No one in the six-bird and divine city would be able to point it out. And now, Zen came along, seeming to know everything about the mud. How could she let him go? Lin was right. Even if she charged Zen 1,000 divine might coins, he would probably have no choice but to accept it. He was clear about what was going on in his inner world. This thing would probably turn out to be extremely useful to him if it was able to evoke such a reaction from his inner world's consciousness. But the twist was, he did not know how it could benefit him. However, he was not willing to spend 500 gold coins on the mud. He shook his head and said, "It's too expensive. I'm just a proving godly warrior. How could I have that much money? 500 divine might coins. Even mid-rank true gods couldn't take out that much money. Most proving godly warriors were extremely poor, and would have to work hard for a long time just to earn a divine might coin." Lin's eyes were full of regret. She had obviously thought of this. How could she even expect a proving godly warrior to take out so much money? But she knew that the proving godly warriors who dared enter the money alley more or less had some background. And she continued talking in order to probe the best price Zen could offer. "Then how much can you offer?" Lin asked. "I only have 30 divine might coins," Zen replied. "Only 30? Lin stared at Zen, the corners of her mouth lifting into a smile. "That's too less. I can't sell it at that price." "Well, that's all I have," Zen said regretfully and turned to leave. Lin's smile didn't slip as she watched Zen leave. She was still counting to herself. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 10 steps, 11 steps. He was not far away when he suddenly turned around and walked back. He declared loudly, "I'll double it. 60 divine might coins." Lin shook her head. If the seniors of the Tai clan were to see this scene, they would probably curse Lin for being stupid for not accepting it. They knew that they'd be happy to get 10 divine might coins in exchange for the piece of mud, the use of which they had absolutely no idea about. And now when someone had offered 60 divine might coins for it, Lin had ended up refusing him. "Zen, why must you buy this piece of mud?" Master Evil asked, very confused. Although he was staying in Zen's mind at the moment, he didn't know much about Zen himself. Master Evil had always been confused about one thing. With Zen's talent and cultivation foundation, it wasn't difficult for him to master a godly way. But why hadn't he condensed a godly tile yet? He wanted to enter Zen's inner world to see if he could help, but Zen had refused. He didn't allow Master Evil to pry. Master Evil knew that Zen still didn't trust him. After all, he didn't have a deep friendship with Zen. But what kind of secret did Zen have that he was hiding it so deep? 100 and I'll take it, Zen said, his eyes hardening as he clenched his teeth. Lin was tempted by this price. If she could really sell this piece of mud for over 100 divine might coins, she would definitely be rewarded by the clan. She hesitated from within, but her expression didn't change. If Zen still turned and left, she could still chase him and get him back. At this moment, 2 people rushed over. These were Lin's uncles and were both low-rank true gods. The Tai clan was a small one. They would usually sell what they had gained through this shop. In fact, the money alley was a big market in the six-bird and divine city, and the revenues of the shop that Lin managed could sustain the operation of the entire Tai clan. 100 divine might coins. Sorry, but it's still a no-go. Uncle Alfred and Uncle John, why are you here? Lin greeted her 2 uncles, her eyes still studying Zen's expression. What is being sold for that price? Alfred was surprised. He knew that the Tai clan hadn't obtained any valuable treasures recently, which was why he was startled upon hearing the price. The mud you dug up, Uncle Alfred, Lin said with a smile. 100 divine might coins, and you are not selling it. His eyeballs nearly popped out of his eye sockets. John was also startled. He had seen that Zen was only a proving godly warrior, which was why he hadn't paid much attention to him. But since Zen was offering such a high price, he was now naturally beginning to see him in a new light. He examined Zen carefully, and suddenly, his eyes gleamed as a thought seemed to occur to him. Come and take this, friend. I was the one who dug this mud out back then. 100 divine might coins, and that's a deal, Alfred said, hurriedly picking up the piece of mud. But just as he was about to hand it over to Zen, Lin said angrily, Uncle Alfred. At the same time, John reached out to stop Alfred and pulled him and Lin aside. While he spoke to them, Lin and Alfred kept shooting occasional looks at Zen. Zen smiled wryly at this. He had already expected the man to recognize him. The story of Zen in the Brilliant Moon restaurant had already spread throughout the city. But Zen hadn't revealed his name. Although the other true gods of the six-bird and divine city knew about his story, not many people could recognize him. However, one of this girl's uncles seemed to have recognized him. As expected, when the little girl returned, she smiled and said to Zen, "This item, 500 divine might coins. Anything below this and we'll not sell it." Lin now knew that Zen was the one who had defeated Eric with one strike in the Brilliant Moon restaurant and won 5,000 divine might coins from the Hulan clan. So it was expected for her to take a firm stand. But still, Lin was a principled person. If she were not, she would be asking for a price of more than 2,000 divine might coins, not just 500. Zen gave the girl a deep, meaningful look. He knew that it was useless to say anything. If he had known this earlier, he would have been more decisive. The divine might coins that he had won from Eric hadn't been transferred into his space ring yet. Zen shook his sword sheath and the divine might coins fell out one by one. 500 divine might coins was not a small transaction in the money alley. It immediately attracted the attention of the people on both sides of the street. When some of the true gods saw that Zen was merely a proving godly warrior and was still able to take out such a large sum of money, they were surprised. As more and more people gathered there to look, someone recognized Zen. "Look, it's the kid that defeated Eric at the Brilliant Moon restaurant. He won 5,000 divine might coins with one move. He has made a huge fortune. This guy has such great luck. Luck, if you do not rely on your cultivation of a true god, can you defeat that young master from the Hulan clan?" Amidst these discussions, Zen took over the piece of mud from Lin. The moment he grabbed the mud, the consciousness from his inner world started to pour out like a hungry wolf setting eyes on a sheep. It could not wait any longer. Really, so many divine might coins just to buy a piece of mud? The Tai clan has placed that piece of trash there as a treasure for several years. That young girl from the Tai clan knows how to do business, but this piece of mud has always been priced at 500. 500 divine might coins. I'll eat that piece of mud if it can be sold at that price. Too late, it had already been sold. Everyone was dumbfounded. They could not believe that someone would buy that item at such a preposterously high price. What was more, the one who had bought it was the kid who had just become famous by defeating Eric. After Zen had counted the divine might coins and paid the bill, he stuffed the mud into his space ring and left, the crowd parting as he made his way out. He had been ripped off by the little girl, but Zen still felt that it was worth it. He believed that this seemingly ordinary object contained quite a few secrets. Master Evil didn't ask anything along the way. He knew that if Zen wasn't willing to tell him, it must be related to his secret. Master Evil also knew that he was relying on Zen now, so he wouldn't ask about things he shouldn't know. Once he returned to his temporary residence in the six-burden divine city, Zen sat down with his legs crossed. He placed the piece of mud in front of him and carefully inspected it. His inner world's consciousness was now restless. Out of caution, Zen would not casually place this item into his cinnabar field. Chapter 1774, Cloud. On the surface, it looked like this piece of mud was an ordinary object, scattered all over the outskirts of the six-burden divine city. Zen immersed his consciousness into it, but didn't discover anything out of the ordinary. If this really was an ordinary piece of mud, putting it in his inner world wouldn't cause any trouble at all. As this thought crossed his mind, Zen inwardly said to Master Evil, "I need to meditate and cultivate now." Master Evil rolled his eyes and shrunk his soul into a ball. Strands of purple light flashed on the surface of his soul and condensed to form the word, seal. He had sealed his soul on his own. This seal could only be undone from the outside. Zen would release Master Evil's soul once he finished his cultivation. Zen had earlier told Master Evil that he would not allow anyone to spy on him while he was cultivating. Back in the Misty Mountain village, Zen had neglected this important point because he was too anxious to suppress the evil god. But at the time, Master Evil's soul had also been on the verge of collapsing, which was why he hadn't tried to pry into Zen's inner world. There were some secrets that Master Evil knew, but it was not as big a deal as to make an impact. Zen was cautious at the moment. Zen took the piece of mud in his hands and placed it in front of his belly. As he activated his cinnabar field, a faint light flowed out of his abdomen, forming a short passage between his inner world and the divine land. The consciousness within his inner world was still restless, continuously urging Zen. Zen was hesitant as he looked at the brown mud. But it was not long before all his hesitation disappeared from his face. With a wave of his hands, the mud disappeared from his hands. In the inner world, the dust condensed in the sky, and before long, had turned into an incarnation of Zen. He looked up in time to see a black dot fall from the sky. Zen had now personally entered his inner world. He flew towards the mud at the same descending speed as the mud's, keeping a close eye on its movements. But the piece of mud continued to roll down and fall. As it gathered speed, it began to disintegrate into bits and pieces in the air. It wasn't long before the mud finally fell into the chaotic sea. The mud was the exact same color as the brown chaotic sea. It had disappeared without a trace, but Zen could still feel its presence. Zen stood motionlessly on the surface of the chaotic sea and quietly observed the changes within. With a swooshing sound, a figure rapidly approached Zen from a distance in the sky. The evil god had made an appearance. Once the evil god had dissolved his sacred place, he had become a hidden cultivator. He had succeeded in erasing any traces of his existence in this world. Well, almost. As the creatures multiplied with each generation, fewer and fewer creatures knew of the existence of the evil god. Creator. The evil god bowed respectfully towards Zen. Zen nodded. Please rise. Why did you come here? The evil god asked respectfully. Once the evil god had submitted to Zen, Zen imparted some very valuable experience to him. Many years ago, the evil god had occupied all the continents in the world. Only the gigantic world tree and the ice tree at the other end of the world had remained untouched by him. The evil god could not enter the savage ice plain where the ice tree was located, as the ice flames froze everything within the plain. Once Zen had taught him the cultivation method for the ice soul flame, he had stayed in the savage ice plain to cultivate. Although he hadn't completely comprehended the ice soul flame yet, the profound law power had broadened his horizon. I have found something that might be very helpful for this world, said Zen, staring at the turbulent brown sea. Zen was not sure about the effects of the mud, but he could tell from the information he received from his inner world that his judgment would probably not be wrong. Very helpful. The evil god's eyes lit up. Before fighting Zen, the evil god had understood that there was a limit to him in this world. When he reached the Spirit Supreme realm, it was as if he had already reached the limit of his cultivation level. That was not a limitation of his abilities. It was a bottleneck of the world that it did not allow him to become stronger. But the evil god speculated that there should still be two greater realms above the Spirit Supreme realm. After Zen had spared his life, he had finally solved the puzzle in the evil god's mind. There was indeed a spirit transformation realm and a realm of world lords after one reached the Spirit Supreme realm. Being a world lord was not the end of one's cultivation. Only when Zen's own cultivation base became stronger and the world within his inner world became larger would the evil god have the qualification to advance further. That was why the evil god was overjoyed at Zen's words. A bubble arose from the sea. Zen's eyes flickered, as the evil god stared fixedly at the bubbles. Plop, plop, huge bubbles continued to noisily pop up from the depths of the chaotic sea. A huge fish flew out of the sea with a splash, frightened at the noise. It flapped and rolled in the air before falling back in and swimming towards the depth of the chaotic sea. Tens of thousands of small fish were swimming frantically in every direction, instinctively feeling that this place was now in danger of disaster. Zen had known when the mud had dissolved into fine sand and merged into the chaotic sea. These blisters were the result of the fusion of the mud and the chaotic sea. As the number of bubbles increased, the sounds became louder and louder. The bubbles rose and spread such that Zen was at the center and the sea within a radius of 100,000 feet around him was filled with the bubbles, looking like it was boiling. What is this? The evil god was confused. He had always been conceited, and it didn't matter that he had submitted to Zen. He still thought that he was smarter than him. It was just that his experience and knowledge had restricted his talent. Zen shook his head. I'm not sure either. The world just told me that it needs it. Does this world speak to you? As a native of Zen's inner world, the evil god wasn't sure, but he knew that this world seemed to have its own consciousness. Zen smiled but did not answer the evil god's question. Instead, he continued to pay attention to the strange scene unfolding before him. He had already discovered some subtle changes. After the bubbles appeared, tiny droplets of water began to slowly rise into the air. These droplets of water were tiny and no one could see them. But Zen could feel them with his omniscient ability. The bubbles were releasing these tiny droplets of water, continuously rising, converging and creating a mist in the sky. What's that? The evil god asked in surprise when he saw the misty object in the sky. Zen smiled and replied, you can call it a cloud. The inner world that Zen had built was actually incomplete and was somewhat different from the divine land in essence. The biggest difference was that everything within the divine land was transformed by the chaotic energy. For example, a tree in the divine land was an ordinary creature because it was formed from the chaotic energy. But it wouldn't return to the chaotic energy once it dissolved. Moreover, to the creatures of the divine land, the chaotic energy was an extremely poisonous substance that they couldn't resist. Only holy beings and divine trees could resist the corrosive power of the chaotic energy. The creatures within Zen's inner world, on the other hand, were born directly from the chaotic sea. This chaotic sea was liquefied chaotic energy. These creatures frequently touched the chaotic energy and weren't eroded. This meant that the chaotic sea did not transform into ordinary seawater, and the liquefied chaotic energy would not evaporate. There were naturally no clouds in this world, and the evil god obviously did not know what a cloud was either. "Is that a cloud?" the evil god muttered as he stared at the cloud in the sky that gradually became denser as time passed. The water droplets continued to condense, the brown cloud became thicker, and the light in Zen's eyes became brighter. He had never thought that the problem that had puzzled him for so long would be solved by a piece of mud. Chapter 1775, A Tiny Crystal. The condensation of one's own godly tile was a very complicated process. Moreover, the situation would be completely different from each martial artist. The difficulty would be based on their own comprehension of the godly ways. Zen's talent was not inferior to Rocher's. However, Rocher was still able to condense his godly tile before Zen. The reason for such fast development had something to do with the composition of Rocher's inner world. Rocher's inner world was completely condensed with life vitality. After his sea of life vitality was formed, it turned into ordinary seawater. Every day the seawater evaporated and gathered in the clouds in the sky. As such, a complete life vitality cycle was formed in his inner world. The design was simply ingenious. In fact, the cycle was a purification process. 10 godly geniuses had received a godly plate from Irene. To this day, the godly plates had remained fixed within their inner worlds. As the life vitality got constantly purified, it transformed into pure, white clouds. The clouds contained one's comprehension of the godly way. Additionally, the clouds would be continuously filtered through the godly plate. A godly tile would then be slowly formed in the godly plate. However, there was no such process within Zen's inner world. His inner world was completely different from Rocher's and the others. Without that particular process, it became very difficult for Zen to condense his godly tile. He tried to activate the power of chaotic energy. Additionally, he combined it with his comprehension of the emotion-closing godly way. He wanted to inject the chaotic energy into the godly plate, but after countless experiments, there was no significant effect. There was still no godly tile formed in his godly plate. Back then, Mike had already followed Zen into his inner world. With a single glance, Mike had already found the problem. However, his father did not give Zen a perfect solution. After all, the primal chaos technique was not complete. It was still enigmatic and had some problems. Even Bromley could not do anything about it if he had been there. At that time, Mike suggested that Zen turn the chaotic energy into other things, or specifically, turn it into pure clouds. The conversion would probably help Zen in his comprehension. Zen had tried his best to convert his chaotic energy, but he failed in the end. Therefore, in the period before he left the evolutionary universe, Zen himself was also very confused. Without enough knowledge about the chaotic energy inside him, he was left dumbfounded. He was unable to figure out a way to master his godly way. To make matters worse, the methods that others used were also not suitable for him. However, after he practiced the primal chaos technique up to his current stage, Zen knew that he no longer had a way back. Regardless of whether that path would lead him to success or failure, it would be impossible for him to go back and cultivate life vitality. Up until that moment, Zen had vaguely come to a conclusion. It seemed that an extremely important link was absent in his cultivation of the primal chaos technique. If he could figure out what it was, he might be able to achieve a higher level. Even though Bromley was a holy being, he was still an ordinary creature and a member of the divine land. As such, Bromley still had some impediments in his cultivation and knowledge. Although the primal chaos technique was a martial art created by him on a whim, Bromley could not escape the limitations of being an ordinary creature. For example, the evil god in the inner world of Zen's body did indeed possess extraordinary talent. Even Zen was amazed at the things he had done and some of his brilliant ideas. If that person was born in the divine land, he would likely be an extremely extraordinary warrior. But because he was born in Zen's inner world, his perception and knowledge were limited. Sadly, one's origin could affect their limitations and possibly their abilities. Therefore, the flaw of the primal chaos technique was not Bromley's fault. As Bromley was a mere ordinary creature, his knowledge of the chaos was incomplete. As such, the primal chaos technique was also incomplete. Therefore, when Bromley passed the primal chaos technique to Zen, it was already a huge risk in the first place. The grayish-brown clouds slowly formed and imprinted themselves onto Zen's pupils. An expectant expression was seen in Zen's face. Hope could be seen on the horizon. It was because Zen saw that the clouds seemed to have a soul as they floated eastward. That was where the godly plate was. Zen's eyes suddenly flashed as a golden light appeared. His comprehension of the emotion-closing godly way constantly revolved in his mind. At the same time, from the brown clouds, faint sword shadows could be seen. As those sword shadows flew around, they emitted a sharp aura. Sound of the metals clashed against each other reverberated through his inner world. Sword clouds, condense. With expectant eyes, Zen had condensed all of his insights about the emotion-closing godly way into those clouds. Afterward, the brown-colored clouds had turned into a cluster of sword clouds. This momentum, what's happening? The evil god looked at the clouds in the sky with eyes filled with shock. A small gap could be seen in his mouth as his mind was filled with confusion. Although the evil god had lost to Zen before, the power Zen used was the power that governed this inner world. As such, the evil god could not resist the power. That was the creator's privilege. Zen's power would irresistibly affect those inside his inner world. However, the evil god had never seen Zen's true strength. Now that the evil god had seen Zen's comprehension of the emotion-closing godly way, his heart was stirred. A strong emotion had swirled deep inside the evil god. The sword clouds floated rapidly in the air. Finally, they reached the side of the godly plate. With great precision, they moved towards the godly plate and gathered around it. The process continued for a long time. Finally, the sword clouds became dimmer and dimmer. Darkness had engulfed each of them. They were actually completely absorbed by the godly plate. With a flash of his body, Zen arrived at the top of the godly plate. He focused his gaze and saw that there was a hair-like object in the middle of the godly plate. It also emitted a brown light, and it seemed to be some sort of crystal. The thin crystal in the godly plate radiated a strange essence. After he observed the crystal for a while, Zen composed himself. He then reached out his hand and touched the crystal. The moment Zen touched the crystal, it suddenly released an absurd amount of extremely sharp energy. Zen's guard wasn't fast enough to react to the crystal's energy. PFF'd. In the blink of an eye, Zen's arm was cut off. After the attack, Zen instinctively retreated to avoid the released energy. With a light wave of his broken arm, a brand new arm was instantly formed. Although he was injured by the hair-like crystal, Zen still revealed a smile on his face. With curious eyes, he stared at the crystal. The hair-like crystal should be an essential part in the formation of a godly tile. Or rather, the crystal was an extremely small godly tile. It was also the embodiment of Zen's complete comprehension of the emotion-closing godly way. It was all thanks to that piece of mud that Zen was able to form the tiny crystal. Although it was very far from a complete godly tile, Zen was happy that he had found the right direction. He finally had a clue on how to form his godly tile. That was the most crucial point. After a while, the evil god caught up to him again. The way the evil god looked at Zen became extremely different. He was originally an extremely arrogant youth. Even if he was completely suppressed by Zen, the stubborn emotions in his heart had not dissipated. He believed that he lost to Zen just because of his own limitations, not because Zen was really stronger than him. However, the evil god had seen Zen's true comprehension of martial arts. He realized that Zen's talents were as vast as the ocean, almost unfathomable. With awe in his eyes, the evil god was completely convinced of Zen's might. Creator, can we comprehend the sword intent in those sword clouds? The evil god asked with a respectful tone. Zen turned at the evil god. With a calm tone, he said, now is not the time. He had only crossed the threshold of the emotion-closing godly way. Additionally, Zen had never seen the godly way tablet of the emotion-closing godly way. With his limited comprehension, he couldn't possibly create a godly way tablet randomly and place it in his inner world. The evil god revealed a look of disappointment. A deep sigh escaped his mouth as his eyebrows creased. At that moment, he no longer wanted to challenge Zen. Instead, he was immersed in the martial arts. All the martial arts in his eyes were like many difficult problems that waited for him to solve. However, there were too few problems in Zen's inner world. There wasn't much for him to solve. The only one that he had yet to fully comprehend was probably the ice soul flame in the ice field. Nonetheless, he also knew that it wouldn't be long before he could completely comprehend the ice soul flame. The emotion-closing godly way contained within the sword clouds was like a peerless beauty that had attracted him. With curious eyes, the evil god was immediately enchanted. However, he did not have the qualifications to cultivate it, so he was naturally a little depressed. If there comes a day when I have the opportunity, I will make you leave this world to see the real godly way tablets and let you comprehend them yourself, Zen added. As a being in his inner world, the evil god was completely under Zen's control. However, he was still impressed with the evil god's abilities. With such a talent in his inner world, it would be a waste if he didn't guide him to advance further. However, Zen made such a promise also because he was extremely happy to see the crystal condensed on the godly plate. It was a glorious moment for him. When he heard Zen's words, the evil god was immediately overjoyed. Happiness was apparent in his expression. He would finally be able to leave Zen's inner world and see those godly way tablets. The evil god didn't understand what a godly way tablet was, and he didn't need to know too much. The important thing was that he had the chance to leave Zen's inner world, which was like a cage to him. Creator, I will definitely help you take care of this world, the evil god said with a serious expression. Zen nodded his head lightly. The evil god was indeed very smart. With a committed attitude, the evil god played the role of a gardener in Zen's inner world. He helped Zen carefully manage the inner world so that the many forces in his inner world would no longer fight and the number of life forms in the world would steadily increase. Not long after, the avatar of Zen dissipated from the inner world. Then, Zen suddenly opened his eyes as a smile appeared on his face. He was finally able to make some progress. However, his smile didn't last long. It seemed that the miraculous mud was indeed helpful in the condensation of his godly tile. However, the problem was that he had only stumbled upon it with great luck. He only obtained a piece of it from the money alley. If he really wanted to condense his godly tile, he would need a considerable amount of such mud. But where could he find more of the mud? Chapter 1776, The Test. Since the girl's uncle was able to dig out this piece of mud, there was a very high possibility that there would be another. Hopefully, there would be a third, or maybe even more. Zen also had a headache due to that little girl's character. She was simply a girl who saw only money. Without any hesitation, she had already tricked Zen once. If he went to her directly, he would probably be ripped off again. However, the condensation of his godly tile was the most important thing for Zen at that moment. If he really could find the other pieces of mud, then he would have to accept it no matter the cost. The condensation of his godly tile was worth more than mere divine might coins. As he thought about it, Zen could no longer stay calm. A conflicted expression appeared in his face. After he lifted the seal on Master Evil, he asked, "Do you know where that little girl came from?" Master Evil was surprised by Zen's query. With a curious tone, he asked Zen, "That piece of mud, is it really effective on you?" When Master Evil saw Zen's expression, he naturally understood that Zen had bought the right thing. However, he was still confused about the use of that piece of mud. Zen nodded, "Yes, it is very important to me. That young lady claimed to be from the Tai clan. It must be the Tai clan outside the six-burden divine city," Master Evil said as he recalled. As the ancestral land of the Han clan, the six-burden region was much larger than those small regions. However, the surname Tai was not a great one, and even Master Evil only knew one Tai clan in the six-burden region. It was a rather small and unknown group. Master Evil smiled and said, "The Tai clan is not even considered as one of the third-tier clans in the six-burden region, so they can't force their way into the six-burden divine city. After so many years, there seems to be no sign of them to rise to prominence. The great and small clans in the divine land all aim to control the divine cities. Once they controlled any random divine city, they could receive a large number of divine might coins every year without any risks. As such, if they could take over any divine city, a clan would be more powerful and wealthier. Every clan's leader had always wanted to become a city lord. However, the number of divine cities was limited. As such, the various great clans moved to the central divine cities under the control of the wealthy clans on floating islands. Each wealthy clan possessed a vast number of divine cities. They would sometimes let a great clan take control of it with a certain negotiation. For example, the divine cities of the 36 regions were all controlled by the Han clan. To get a divine city, all smaller clans needed the Han clan's permission. The Tai clan was not qualified to enter the city. Moreover, they even relied on a small stall in Money Alley. Their influence was not really big. As such, Master Evil concluded that the development of the Tai clan was not very good. After he got a rough comprehension of the situation of the Tai clan, Zen planned to go to the Money Alley to look for the little girl. Master Evil faintly smiled, "Although I know that the mud is very important to you, you seem to have forgotten that the divine land is different from the evolutionary universe." Zen was confused for a moment. After a few seconds, an expression of realization painted his face as he immediately understood what Master Evil meant. Previously, Zen had spent quite a bit of time traveling from the Misty Mountain village to the Mirror City. Although the Tai clan was located outside of the six-burden divine city, the distance between them shouldn't be too close, especially with Zen's current speed. Even if he rushed to the Tai clan, it would still take a lot of time. Additionally, the test of the Heavenly Han house was very near. He couldn't afford to travel such a far distance. Since that's the case, we shall wait for the exam to be over before we consider it, Zen nodded his head. The divine land was endless. Without a roaring token, Zen was like an ant that pathetically crawled under the leaves of a primal forest. The divine land was too vast for him, and right now, he couldn't even communicate with his father's disciples. He was stuck in an unfamiliar environment. If he could be accepted by the Han clan, not only could Zen borrow Han clan's resources to cultivate, he could also approach the floating islands as fast as he could. Both of these goals were equally important to Zen. As such, the dilemma still conflicted with his mind. A few days later, the Heavenly Han house's test finally began. Countless warriors were eager to prove their abilities. This year's hotspots had already been listed and posted in the 6-burden divine city. All the proving godly warriors from 1st to 3rd place all had the same surname, Han. Though those warriors were all merely disciples from the Han clan's branches, their surname was still something they could be proud of. In reality, the people who manage the Han clan's ancestral land all belonged to the small branches of the Han clan. Some of them who were in-laws even took the initiative to change their surname to Han. The real Han clan had long gone to the floating island. Zen had met the 2 Han sisters in the divine refinement forbidden land. Both of them radiated beauty and prestige. Even in the real Han clan, their status was extraordinary. However, even if it was just the Han clan's branch family, they were still far more powerful than the ordinary 2nd-tier and 3rd-tier clans. In the past, the 5 most popular people in the Heavenly Han house usually had the surname Han. However, there were some exceptions this year. The nameless young man who defeated Eric in one move in the Brilliant Moon restaurant was ranked 4th. Everyone was still in awe of how the nameless young man defeated Eric. The vast space within the Heavenly Han house was now filled with a sea of people. Countless warriors wanted to be a part of the Heavenly Han house. The vast majority of those who participated in the test were all abnormally excited. Eager expressions could be seen on their faces. Proving godly warriors were not rare in the divine land. As for the majority of the divine citizens, if they wanted to cultivate up to the World Lord realm, it would not be too difficult for them to reach that level even if they just relied on their willpower. The real difficulty was in the cultivation of the godly way and the ability to condense a godly tile, which only a few people could do. If one could enter the Heavenly Han house, they would be helped by the Heavenly Han house. As such, the achievement of such difficult tasks would be more attainable. Once they could condense the godly tile and get an infinite lifespan, they would have a bright future. Thus, a considerable number of proving godly warriors participated in the test of the Heavenly Han house. They all wanted to see if they could pass nearly every year. Only a few of them would pass each year. However, they still didn't give up hope. They would usually try again next year. On the platform at the side of the arena, 5 proving godly warriors either stood or sat. Those 5 people occasionally glanced down at the black mass of proving godly warriors. Disdain was apparent in their eyes. Brother, why are these divine citizens so excited? Over 100,000 people are fighting for over 20 places. Are they all here just to take the test for fun? Among the 5 people, a man asked with a smile. An arrogant expression could be seen in his face. That person was Seth Han, who was ranked 3rd on the list of examinees of the Heavenly Han house's test. You're right, they might not have viewed themselves objectively, Hector Han said with a smile. He was the oldest and ranked 2nd among the Han clan's branch families, so they all respected him. Additionally, he was also ranked 2nd on the list. Humph, I don't know if the 4th ranked person will appear, but I do want to see the person that pushed my ranking down, Zane Han, who was on the far right, said indignantly. A sour expression accompanied his bitter remark. Zane had originally been ranked 4th on the list, but recently, the incident that happened in the Brilliant Moon restaurant was spread all over the city. It was said that a mysterious young man had suddenly appeared. Not only did the young man know how to make the original pure food pill, but he also had defeated Eric of the Hulan clan with one move. That was the reason why Zane had been pushed down 1 rank by the mysterious young man. Zane, of course, felt quite displeased. Hatred seethed deep inside him. Eric was only ranked 11th and that mysterious youth defeated him and then ranked 4th. That is indeed unfair, Seth said as he shook his head. However, curiosity about the mysterious young man had entered his head. I think so too. Those people who made the name list originally rely only on catching groundless information. Since most of the information comes from rumors, it is impossible to make the rankings accurately. Since they were from the same clan, they naturally upheld Zane. It was just as what they had said, Eric was indeed only ranked 11 on the name list. However, who of the Han clan's disciples present could defeat him in one move? Eric still had high popularity and dignity within the Han clan. Moreover, anyone with a keen eye could tell that the day in the Brilliant Moon restaurant, Zen had defeated Eric without any effort. Such a feat would definitely boost his popularity. People who compiled the name list together also relied on the Han clan. Every time the Heavenly Han House's test was held, they would send people with sharp eyes to gather information in the Brilliant Moon restaurant. Those people only ranked Zane, Seth, and the others at the top because they were afraid that Han clan might feel embarrassed. However, what happened in the Brilliant Moon restaurant had really moved them. If they were to judge by their sharp sense, no one on the list could compare to Zen. The old man whose surname was Wu was abnormally busy today as well. Even as a true god who taught disciples the godly way, he still had to help arrange things during the test of the Heavenly Han House. As he busied himself with his work, his gaze wandered around the crowd. As a true god, although he was average in strength, it was easy for him to find someone amongst the 100,000 people present. His keen eyesight wandered through the crowd in search of someone. After he searched for a while, the old man shook his head and let out a soft sigh. He wasn't able to find the warrior he wanted to see. That Thad didn't participate in the test today. The old man surnamed Wu had spent the past few days trying to eliminate the two taboos, based on the mystical method that Zen had taught him. Although he only cultivated it for few days, it actually showed a little effect. He had a stubborn personality and did not like to owe favors to others. Even after Thad taught him such an impressive technique, he had only given him a place to take the test. That was too petty of him. In the eyes of the old man surnamed Wu, Thad couldn't enter the Heavenly Han House. Nonetheless, he still wanted to return Thad the favor. If Thad came today to take the test, then he would have a valuable gift for him. Unfortunately, he didn't see Thad. The old man thought that Thad had lost his confidence and directly chose to give up. That kind of thing happened very often in the Heavenly Han House's test. Warriors would usually suffer from stage fright and retreat from the test. At that moment, a loud discussion among the crowd was heard. The proving godly warriors all suddenly chattered about a person who just arrived. Is it really him, the one that defeated Eric in one move? Are you sure? He looks so ordinary. Chapter 1777, The Heavenly Han House. Every name on that list was a matter of great concern. Undoubtedly, it was that mysterious young man who had the highest level of attention. No one noticed Zen when he appeared at the gate of the Heavenly Han House. But once he was discovered and identified, word spread quickly. Soon after, in the vast yard of the Heavenly Han House, everyone knew that the proving godly warrior clad in plain clothes was the young man who had defeated Eric in a single move. Eric's eyes shot through the crowd and landed right on Zen. His eyes were like two awls that pierced straight through Zen. Back in the Brilliant Moon restaurant, before Eric could even react, he was already defeated by Zen. After Zen hit him, Eric was rendered unconscious. Later, he woke up to the dreadful fact that he had been defeated in a single move. 5,000 divine might coins were by no means a small amount of money, but to Eric, it was nothing. Recently, everyone had been talking about that young man. As Zen had not left his name behind, people referred to him as the one who defeated Eric in a single move. Eric had become a mere stepping stone for Zen, much to his shame. Because of Zen's sensitivity, he immediately felt Eric's hostility. Apart from him, there were others in the crowd who didn't seem too friendly. A faint smile still hung on Zen's face as he walked through the crowd, not caring in the slightest. After confirming Eric's strength, Zen had a complete understanding of the strength these proving godly warriors had. In the evolutionary universe, when ordinary talents became world lords, they grew even stronger than these proving godly warriors. The proving godly warriors were no match for top-ranked ace talents or godly geniuses. Zen had no interest in dealing with these proving godly warriors, but to him, entering the Heavenly Han House was mandatory. Wherever Zen passed by, the surrounding proving godly warriors gave way for him. Some were envious of him and some believed he was a nobody. He must have been lucky enough to be able to be on par with the elite warriors of big clans. Still, there were those who felt that Zen wouldn't be happy for long. If someone targeted Zen in the exam of the Heavenly Han House, he could very well be eliminated. News of the mysterious young man who defeated Eric in the Brilliant Moon restaurant had also reached Master Wu. Despite being a true god, he was also very curious about this powerful man blessed with luck. Hearing the commotion, he pushed his way through the crowd. When his eyes landed on Zen, he was stunned. He had been looking for Zen just then, but who would have thought that Zen would appear right away? When Master Wu noticed the surrounding warriors, he finally realized that the mysterious young man ranking 4th on the list was actually Zen himself. After he understood this point, Master Wu was stunned. The first time Zen appeared in front of the Heavenly Han house, Master Wu treated him as a mere martial artist. Even though Zen had guided him, Master Wu thought that it was all due to luck. Zen had heard of his method from others, after all, his own strength wasn't worth mentioning. Finally, Master Wu understood why Zen didn't mind receiving a white jade token only. Zen had the strength and confidence to pass the exam of the Heavenly Han house, so a white jade token allowing him to participate in the exam was enough for him. Master Wu had been afraid that Zen might want to be enrolled in the Heavenly Han house straight away, but he was mistaken. Finding an empty corner, Zen leaned against the wall. To drown out the noisy environment, he closed his eyes and waited quietly for the examination to begin. Though he didn't want to cause anyone any trouble, there were some warriors trying to cause trouble for him. On a high platform at the side of the yard, the Han clan's 5 elite disciples stared at Zen with different expressions. Zen's eyes were as cold as ice. Seeing Zen stand still, Zen announced, "I'll go meet this guy." Just as he was about to make a move, Seth reached out a hand to warn him. "Don't make a move in the Heavenly Han house." The Han clan was the rule maker of the 6-burden divine city. It had the 1,000 commandments slate under its control. For their own benefit, they knew ways to evade the rules of the slate. But it was the examination day of the Heavenly Han house. If Zane were to make a move in front of such a large crowd, he'd end up causing way too much trouble. "I know what to do," Zane said nonchalantly. Jumping off the platform, he walked towards Zen. The proving godly warriors along the way saw Zane approaching and gave way. In the 6-burden divine city, no one dared to provoke a member of the Han clan because the territory was theirs. They had an unchecked power to kill. When Zane walked up to Zen, he saw that Zen's eyes were still tightly shut. He frowned and coldly said, "Those who participate in the examination of the Heavenly Han house must register their names and origins." "Who are you and where are you from?" Hearing Zane's tone, all the proving godly warriors got excited. The exam hadn't even started yet and a show was already unfolding. They all wondered how that mysterious young man would deal with Zane. Slowly opening his eyes, Zen glanced at Zane faintly before closing them again as if he had chosen not to hear his question. "You'd better answer me. If you don't, I'll expel you from the Heavenly Han house." Feeling overlooked, Zane's tone grew angrier just as his blood started boiling. Finally, Zen smiled and asked, "Are you an examiner of the Heavenly Han house?" Zane hadn't expected Zen to ask such a question. After a pause, he replied, "I'm not an examiner, so what? Since you're also here to take the exam, what right do you have to question me?" Zen asked calmly. For a moment, Zane thought about it, the corners of his mouth curling up as his expression turned proud. "Because Han is my last name. I represent the examiners of the Heavenly Han house." In the city, the Han clan members didn't have a need for reason, they were unchallenged. Then, Zen opened his eyes and looked at Zane mischievously. "If a Han clan member can represent the examiners of the Heavenly Han house, is there a need for us to take the exam? Wouldn't it be just as well if the Heavenly Han house directly enrolls your Han clan members? Why bother enrolling the warriors from the 36 regions? Are you putting on some kind of act? Everyone, don't you think so?" Zen asked calmly. All the proving godly warriors present were holding on to a sliver of hope that they could prove the godly way. They had used all sorts of methods to obtain a spot in the test and participate in the exam. However, Zane's words were completely unreasonable. He himself was here to participate in the test, so the Heavenly Han house should at least guarantee the fairness of the test. Otherwise, the whole exam was a joke. Although the chances of these warriors being admitted into the Heavenly Han house were low, it didn't stop them from pursuing it. Fairness was a must. As Zen quieted down, the rest of the warriors began chattering among themselves. "That's right. If Zane thinks he's an examiner, then he can just announce that he has passed the exam and joined the Heavenly Han house. Why does he still need to act for everyone to see? We came all the way here just to be toyed with. Every year, half the slots are taken up by the disciples of Han clan. Just enroll them and stop with the act." Before long, the faint discussions grew into a wave of booing. Some even began making a ruckus. "It seems there's no need for an exam this year. Just let the Heavenly Han house decide on who can enter. I thought one's comprehension and strength were what mattered, but I was wrong. The Han clan has the final say. We might as well just leave now." Of course, the warriors weren't intending to leave. They were just relieved to have someone take the lead in venting their anger. The playfulness in Zen's eyes grew more apparent the longer he stared at Zane. He was deliberately guiding the emotions of these proving godly warriors to say such words. But he didn't think the result would be so satisfying. The booing grew louder and louder, spreading back and forth like a tidal wave through the courtyard. It was something completely new to Zane, leaving him in a panic. Although he could represent the Han clan, its rules still stood. If he caused unnecessary trouble, he would be severely punished. Chapter 1778. Tossing the White Jade Tokens. Zane was at a loss for words. Suddenly, a well-built middle-aged man walked to the center of the yard. With a displeased expression, he quickly shouted, "Quiet down." The man's voice was filled with authority as if there was an irresistible force that sealed everyone's mouths. As his voice echoed, the entire heavenly Han house instantly became abnormally quiet. The middle-aged man glared at Zane angrily. Seth, who stood beside the man, shook his head slightly. This middle-aged man was called Malloy Han, Seth's uncle. Additionally, he was also the leader of the Heavenly Han House, who presided over the entrance exam of the Heavenly Han House. When he noticed that the situation didn't look very good, Seth decided to ask Malloy Han out in advance. He didn't want the situation to grow any worse. Malloy Han then said, "Only strength matters in the exam of the Heavenly Han House. I believe everyone knows that there have been many Han clan's disciples who have been eliminated in the past. Guys, I know all of you want to prove the godly way and your perseverance is commendable. I feel honored that you choose our Heavenly Han House. If someone here proves the godly way, they'll be a member of the Han clan. It would then be possible that they will be selected by the floating island and become a disciple of the Holy Emperor." His words, combined with the presence hidden in his voice, captivated everyone. A mixture of fear and respect was felt by those who heard him. True gods had always wanted to enter the floating islands. Even for a reclusive overlord like Master Evil, he had always hoped to be enrolled by one of the floating islands. Nonetheless, it was an unattainable dream for most true gods. Furthermore, what Malloy Han said was not false. The Han clan had also constantly nurtured their own disciples and talented warriors. The cultivation of those under their care was always supported by the necessary resources and guidance. Although the distribution of powers in the Divine Land was extremely stable and the Han clan's status was unbreakable, that did not mean that there was no competition amongst the wealthy clans on the floating islands. The floating islands' rankings in the Time Sea would change every once in a while. Based on the changes in the rankings, the wealthy clans' prestige and reputation would be affected. On the other hand, the clans' actions would also contribute to their rankings. If a wealthy clan was not replenished with new blood for a long time, its floating island's ranking would also continuously drop. What was worse, the clan would gradually lose its discourse power in the Hall of Holy Beings. Its influence would drop along with its ranking. The Han clan also needed to select talented warriors from the 36 regions and send the elites among them to their floating island. The Holy Emperor would choose the most talented one to be his disciple. Only the best ones would have that opportunity. Once, Zen encountered Marco, Matteo, and Pranav in the evolutionary universe. Although they were only low-rank true gods, they were still much stronger than ordinary true gods. Just as Malloy Han finished his remark, a melodious bell chime came from the depths of the Heavenly Han House. It echoed throughout the hall. Boom. In theory, sound is created by an invisible force and normally speaking, it is not visible to the naked eyes. The moment the bell chime rang out, yellow ripples suddenly appeared in the sky. Everyone's eyes were focused on the ripples. The yellow ripples constantly spread in the air, and that was why the melodious bell chime was left in their ears. Boom, boom, the second and third chimes rang out. The sounds echoed in everyone's ears. Malloy Han smiled faintly to the crowd. In an authoritative voice, he said, "The spiritual bell has rung. As usual, everyone must throw their white jade token high up into the sky and wait for a while. The examination will begin soon after." The participants' names were recorded in those white jade tokens, and those tokens all had special marks made by the Han clan, so they couldn't be faked. Malloy Han's voice had begun to fade away. Seth, who stood next to Malloy Han, suddenly waved his arm. His white jade token shot out from his hand and flew towards the sky above the Heavenly Han House. He seemed to have put some sort of strength into the white jade token. The white jade token was enveloped in a layer of green light as it flew straight into the sky. However, it seemed to encounter an invisible huge net. Strong unseen resistance was immediately met by the token. The white jade token's momentum rapidly decreased, and eventually, it stopped in the air just like that. This year, Seth Han was the first to make a move. The height of his white jade token reached 670 feet, a person from the Heavenly Han House announced in a rather formal voice. Zen leaned against the wall and stared indifferently at the little white dot in the air. Although he hadn't been in the six-bird and divine city for long, he had at least investigated and knew the rules of the test. The chance of accomplishment of the examination wasn't equal for the participants. After all, when 100,000 people were assessed together, there had to be a sequence. The martial artists at the front naturally held the advantage. As such, every year before the start of the exam, they would throw out white jade tokens to determine the order of each proving godly warrior. There was an extremely strong restrictive force in the sky above the heavenly Han house. The higher the white jade token went, the stronger the restrictive force became. The only way to go higher was with incredible strength. Last year, the highest score that the participants in the heavenly Han house had achieved was only 520 feet. This year, the first participant's result had already surpassed last year's best result. The proctors of the exam all had expectant eyes. This year's participants in the heavenly Han house's exam were far better in both numbers and quality than last year's. As such, Seth's results didn't surprise anyone. After Seth took the initiative, the other participants began to throw their white jade tokens one after another. The tokens all recorded their names and where they came from. When all the tokens were restricted by the force in the air, the order and the detailed information of each of the proving godly warriors would be recorded. The height of their throw would be then announced by one of the proctors. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. When the proving godly warriors were throwing their white jade tokens, all of them used their own methods to apply the power they had comprehended onto the tokens. That way, the white jade tokens could fly a bit higher and earn the warriors a place in the top rankings. It was the only way they could get a better chance for the examination. Some of the white jade tokens had strong flame energy attached to them. As the tokens flew upwards, a series of strange sounds rumbled throughout the place as each warrior attempted to push their white jade token even higher. There were also some white jade tokens that had a variety of different types of powers attached to them. Some of these powers came from various godly ways, while some merely came from the warrior's brute force to throw the tokens. These warriors could be called proving godly warriors, so more or less, they had already stepped into the godly ways. Their strength and abilities were already impressive. However, they didn't have a deep comprehension of the godly ways and were still unable to condense their godly tiles. The vast majority of the white jade tokens could only climb up to a height of 300 to 400 feet. Moreover, only a few could reach a height of over 400 feet. The elite warriors who could reach the results of near 500 feet were already better than 90% of the proving godly warriors. A very small number of proving godly warriors could reach a height of over 500 feet, and they were the elites among elites. The height of their tokens clearly reflected the talent of each warrior. For example, Eric threw his white jade token to a height of 540 feet. With a smug look on his face, he was already quite satisfied with his result. Over 100,000 proving godly warriors threw their white jade tokens at the same time. Countless different colored lines appeared in the sky above the heavenly Han house. Most of the tokens had a unique burst of energy below it. It was truly spectacular. Hiss! A sharp sound pierced through the sky and attracted everyone's attention. The white jade token was wrapped in a black flame. It was like a black meteor that quickly rushed upwards. That particular white jade token was thrown by Zane. Everyone's gaze was already gathered towards his token. In terms of strength, Zane was only ranked 5th on the list, behind Zen. However, everyone was surprised by Zane's black flame. With its help, his white jade token had instantly surpassed the height of Seth's 670 feet. The higher the white jade token, the greater the resistance and the slower it would rise. As such, the difficulty of the task got exponentially harder as the altitude of the throw got higher. Moreover, the black flame still burned on the white jade token. Even though it had already surpassed Seth's record, Zane's token maintained its ascent. It was slow yet it still continued to climb. Finally, it stopped at a height of 790 feet. Zane's face was filled with a pleasant surprise at this sight. He didn't think that he would be able to surpass Seth by so much in a single go. A proud look painted his face. Zane's white jade token actually reached 790 feet. The best result from all the years seems to be only at 820 feet, right? It seems like Zane's strength is really underestimated, he shouldn't be ranked 5th. As he heard those comments, Zane felt very comfortable and his gaze landed on Zen once more. He said in a clear voice, "The disciples of our Han clan have always relied on our own abilities to enter the heavenly Han house. It's very different from what some people think." As Malloy Han heard this, he also nodded his head. The members of the branch families of Han clan were indeed extraordinary. Each of them was able to properly enter the heavenly Han house by the accomplishment of the exam. It was a truly fair competition, and they had to rely on their strength. Each of those disciples had already earned some respect due to their own strength. Zen was still leaning against the wall and tilted his head back slightly. A casual smile was still on his face as he stared indifferently at Zane. He had never wanted to compete with anyone when he came to the heavenly Han house. With the Han clan's floating island as his focus, Zen wished to quietly pass the exam. However, Zane inexplicably had to target him. Throw the white jade token in your hand to the sky. If you don't dare, giving up now will save you some face, Zane said in an arrogant tone. He still wanted to provoke Zen. Almost all of the 100,000 proving godly warriors had tossed their white jade tokens up into the air. Most of the energy that surrounded the tokens had already dissipated. The tokens were densely packed in the air, just like a flock of small white birds that were suspended in the air. It was an extremely spectacular sight. Only a very small number of the proving godly warriors had yet to act. Zen was one of them. Chapter 1779, Shatter the White Jade Token. Zen had originally intended to throw the white jade token up as he pleased. He didn't have any desire to fight for the top spot. After all, he did not want to attract too much attention before even joining the heavenly Han house. The only reason he had defeated Eric at the Brilliant Moon restaurant was that he had been tempted by the 5,000 divine might coins. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered to take action. But now, Zane was trying to provoke him. At the same time, most of the proving godly warriors expectantly turned to Zen. They wanted to see if Zen was as strong as the rumors said he was or if they were just an exaggeration. The rest of you, please throw your white jade tokens. Then, I will make a list, Malloy said. Although his tone was very faint and he didn't mention any specific names, everyone could tell that his words were targeted toward Zen in particular. Moreover, Malloy seemed to dislike Zen. As per Malloy's instructions, the rest of the proving godly warriors threw their white jade tokens one by one. Soon, Zen was the only one left holding the white jade token. He must be a coward, a proving godly warrior said in a low voice. Agreed, he's afraid of losing face. Everyone who is in the heavenly Han house should behave themselves. Why is he going against the Han clan? When Zen heard these words, he felt a bit helpless. He wanted to join the heavenly Han house. When had he ever gone against the Han clan? It was these fellows who had provoked him. You're the only one left. Stop putting on airs. Just show your strength, Zane demanded with a sour expression on his face. The faint smile on Zen's face displeased him. Well then, Zen sighed softly. He then gently flipped the white jade token twice in his hand. Zane, Seth, Eric, and even Malloy all watched Zen's white jade token with unwavering attention. Even though the test of the Han clan had begun, none of them knew Zen's name and origin. Even when Zane had asked him about it outright, he hadn't said anything. Since none of the people present had any measure of Zen's abilities, they were paying close attention to him out of sheer curiosity. On Zen's white jade token were clearly carved the words, Thad Luo from Misty Mountain Village. As soon as they read it, the place erupted into discourse. So his surname is Luo. Misty Mountain Village, where is it? Such small villages can be found everywhere in the 36 regions. There might be hundreds of thousands of them. Who knows where this village is? Zen had already decided to disguise himself as a divine citizen who came from Misty Mountain Village. Since he had already stepped into the godly way, no one would be able to tell that he once used to be a secondary creature. Ignoring the murmurs around him, he slowly walked forward a few steps before raising his head to look at the sky. Then, he smiled and asked, "Do you really look forward to it that much?" Zane's face froze. He hadn't expected Zen to reply with such arrogance. "What am I looking forward to? I just want to see you make a fool of yourself," he retorted without missing a beat. Fine. As he gently held the white jade token in his hand, Zen allowed a cynical smile to spread on his face. Then, he lifted the white jade token far above his head and slung his arm back like he was about to launch it into the air. At the same time, the 9 stars in his inner world began to revolve slowly. His body rose abruptly, and veins bulged out from his temples all the way to his heels. 35% strength. Even though his cultivation level had not increased in recent times, with constant training, both his physical body and his inner world had grown by leaps and bounds. Relying on his body alone, he could easily withstand 35% of the strength source from the 9 stars. As the strength source madly revolved within his body, it moved through every inch of him in a seemingly distorted way. Clap! A crisp sound resounded in the air the moment he slung the white jade token forward with his hand. It was like a large entity had been slapped. The white jade token had been crushed into pieces in midair. The pieces of debris landed on the bodies of some of the proving godly warriors nearby. For a moment, because of the impact combined with the crisp sound, they all thought that they had been slapped by Zen. Each and every one of them stared stupidly at Zen, clueless as to what they had just witnessed. Zane, who didn't get hit by the debris, saw that the white jade token was broken and immediately assumed that Zen had crushed it on purpose. In the silence that ensued, he sneered, "Humph, it's fine if you don't dare to make a move, but you intentionally damage the white jade token. You're smart." Hearing that, Zen waved his hand at Zane and innocently said, "Sorry. I forgot that the white jade token is just a piece of jade. It's too brittle." Zane laughed incredulously and said, "Don't make excuses." But before he could finish his sentence, a voice said, "Shut up." It was Malloy. Although his words were directed at Zane, he was staring at Zen with complete caution, and he was not the only one. All of the other true gods, as well as Master Wu, were staring at Zen in a mixture of surprise and fear. In the beginning, they had wondered how this seemingly ordinary man had been able to defeat Eric, who had been given rigorous training by the Hulan clan, with just one move. Most of them had written it off as a random stroke of luck. But now, they could not ignore the truth that was staring them in the eyes. Just now, when Zen had suddenly flung the white jade token into the air, he had caused space to bend a little. In the evolutionary universe, Zen could easily tear space at will. However, the stability of space in the divine land was beyond his imagination. Even though he had used 35% of his strength and focused all of it into his right hand, it had only caused space to bend slightly. But this slight bend alone had rendered all of the true gods present speechless. Aside from Malloy, who was a mid-rank true god, the rest of them were all low-rank true gods. However, with their vast amounts of experience, they knew that there were only two types of people in the divine land that could influence space. One was the consummate true gods who had surpassed the level of top-rank true gods, while the other was holy beings. However, there was no doubt that the man standing in front of them had distorted space by relying on his strength alone. This was an unimaginable thing that no one present had ever heard of. They had also clearly seen that it wasn't Zen himself who had crushed the white jade token, but the great impact that the token had with the air. The air in the divine land was much more viscous than the air in the evolutionary universe. Therefore, all life forms that entered the divine land would feel an invisible pressure acting on their bodies. However, the original inhabitants of the divine land had long become accustomed to this. The invisible pressure of the air was similar to the powerful gravitational force of the collapsing mountain race's place in the divine refinement forbidden land. Since the air was so viscous, when the white jade token had instantly accelerated to an extremely high speed, the air had formed an invisible wall against it. The white jade token was not strong enough to break through the wall of air by itself, so it had been blown to smithereens. Although it had all happened in a split second, the true gods understood this and began to ponder in their hearts how much power Zen actually possessed. As soon as Malloy had realized that Zen from Misty Mountain Village was not an ordinary warrior, he had begun to be very cautious. However, Zane was still talking nonsense and embarrassing the Han clan, so Malloy was annoyed and couldn't help scolding him. But Zane, who had finally gotten a chance to humiliate Zen, didn't want to let go of the matter. His eyes blazed with fury as he insisted, "Uncle Malloy," he intentionally broke. "Shut up." Malloy's voice turned as cold as ice. As a senior of the Han clan, he couldn't afford to lose face even if Zane ended up doing a good job today. "Zane," as Uncle Malloy said, "don't say anything," Seth advised. Seth was one of the many people present who hadn't clearly seen what had happened, but he was good at gauging the atmosphere and reading people's minds. From the surprised and cautious way Malloy and the other true gods were staring at Zen, Seth could tell that Zen had done something extraordinary just now and that he couldn't be underestimated. With a drastic change in his attitude, Malloy slowly walked over to Zen. The cold smile on his face had disappeared. Now, his face was filled with kindness as he said, "You're Thad Luo, right? And you are from Misty Mountain Village. Our clan rules 36 regions, and there are a total of 13 Misty Mountain villages. In which region is the Misty Mountain Village you live in located?" "I come from the Misty Mountain Village in the Vast Sky region," replied Zen. "The Vast Sky region," Malloy repeated, memorizing the name. He was planning to send someone to investigate Zen's background. He smiled at Zen and said, "It's a pity that the white jade token has been damaged, but it's not your fault. How about we give you something else to throw? Otherwise, I wouldn't know where to put you on the list." Zen had no objections to Malloy's arrangement, so he casually nodded his head. Chapter 1780, Short halberds. Malloy also understood in his heart that the power that Zen had just released was too scary. The others who also saw Zen's power were also mystified. It had simply exceeded the limit of what a proving godly warrior should possess. To be able to shatter the white jade token with just a single throw, it was enough to prove his ability. For someone who had reached such a level, there was no need to rank him. Zen was clearly at a different level compared to the other participants. Malloy could even make an exception and directly recruit Zen into the Heavenly Han House. However, he needed an excuse to find out Zen's strength. The Heavenly Han House was also under great pressure. For the past 1,000 years, the Holy Emperor of the Han clan had only accepted one disciple. Furthermore, that disciple did not originate from the Heavenly Han House but was a direct descendant from the floating island of Han clan. As such, they still hadn't produced anyone worthy to be a disciple of the Holy Emperor of the Han clan. In these 1,000 years, the Heavenly Han House had already nurtured quite a lot of elites and talents. However, after those talents advanced to become true gods, their performances were very mediocre. Even the warriors who were recommended by the Heavenly Han House to go to the floating island hadn't done anything very impressive. It seemed that the potential of the recruits they had was not that great. The Han clan on the floating island had already spread the word that if the Heavenly Han House failed to recommend an eligible disciple for the Holy Emperor within the next 1,000 years, they would distribute the qualifications of recommending warriors to the 36 regions. At that time, all the proving godly houses in the 36 regions could recommend warriors to the floating island of Han clan. The influence of the Heavenly Han House would greatly decrease. The Holy Emperor of the Han clan was the one who chose his disciples. The Heavenly Han House could only recommend warriors. However, it was difficult to find the right people. Malloy wished that he could become a disciple of the Holy Emperor, but it was a pity that he didn't have the qualifications. With disappointment in his heart, he could only accept his fate. The sub-branches of the Han clan had relied on the main Han clan on the floating island to flourish in the six-burdened divine city. The main Han clan had granted the recommendation rights to the Heavenly Han House. As such, the proving godly warriors in the 36 regions had no choice but to gather in the six-burdened divine city to participate in the test. That contract had made the Heavenly Han House flourish. Although the six-burdened region was the Han clan's ancestral land, the main Han clan had already moved to the floating island. Additionally, the people in the sub-branches of the Han clan were only relatives of the main Han clan. Some of them even had no relation to the Han clan by blood. As such, it was quite generous for the main Han clan to give such a privilege to them. If the Han clan on the floating island gave the right of recommendation to other proving godly houses, then the status of the sub-branches of Han clan would be greatly weakened. Additionally, the other godly houses might also use that opportunity to gain more influence and power. However, it was too difficult to find a disciple that could satisfy the requirements of the Holy Emperor. Such talent was rare even in the bigger clans. Ever since Malloy had taken up his post, he had not seen such a genius who was qualified. At the thought that he had to shoulder the responsibility to secure the position of the sub-branches of Han clan, Malloy's heart felt heavy. He didn't want the sub-branches of the Han clan to fail. With the cultivation of a proving godly warrior, Zen was able to shake a part of the space. A never-before-seen talent had finally arrived in the Heavenly Han House. Malloy's curiosity towards Zen grew more intense. As he saw Zen's skills, the fire of hope in Malloy's heart had ignited. If there was really a sliver of a chance for Zen to be chosen by the Holy Emperor of the Han clan, then Heavenly Han House's position would be saved. Thus, Malloy had mercilessly reprimanded Zen after he previously provoked Thad. Malloy had indeed placed his hopes in Zen. When Zen heard the suggestion from Malloy, he immediately nodded his head in agreement. Malloy then took out an object from his space ring. It was a pair of black short halberds. As he grabbed the halberds, Malloy approached Zen. He smiled and said to Zen, "This pair of short halberds are supreme primordial weapons without any rank. I know you're a sword cultivator, but the value of this pair of short halberds is also about 100 divine might coins. Now, I give them to you and you can use one of them to throw again." When Malloy handed the pair of short halberds to Zen, the envy in Zen's eyes grew even stronger. A deep hatred towards Zen seethed in Zen's heart. For the test of the Heavenly Han House, the 5 descendants of the Han clan sub-branches had all participated. Due to their great potential, they all had a high opinion of each other's strengths. Originally, all 5 of them wanted to take over the top 5 rankings. Additionally, Malloy promised that he would give the pair of short halberds to whoever got the top spot. The weapon that Zane usually used was a short halberd. Although this particular pair of short halberds were not of high quality, they were still supreme primordial weapons. He didn't expect that his uncle would just give them to Zen like that. It was too unfair. Jealousy and disbelief crept into his heart. The eyes of the 5 descendants of the Han clan sub-branches were all focused on Zen. They had different thoughts in their minds. When Seth saw Zane's indignant expression, he lightly patted him on the shoulder and consoled him. Uncle Malloy is also doing this for the consideration of our Han clan sub-branches. This Thad really has such a terrifying strength and talent, so we shouldn't offend him. Don't say anything you shouldn't say. Uncle Malloy might want you to apologize. Why should I apologize? Zane roared angrily in a low voice. He didn't want Malloy to hear him. Why? Seth smiled faintly. He then explained in a warm tone. Don't you understand? It's both a fortune and misfortune to be born in Han clan. Everything you have was given by Han clan, and they have the right to take them away, unless... Unless what? Zane's expression darkened. He didn't want to believe Seth, but he had no choice but to admit that Seth's words were reasonable. Seth continued to smile and said, unless you can display more powerful strength and better talent than Thad. If you could do that, you should be able to attract the attention of the main Han clan. Isn't it very simple? Dang it, is it simple? Zane cursed. Right now, he could only wish that Zen was a swindler and he had used some trick to intentionally shatter that white jade token. However, Zane also knew that it was just an empty wish on his part. Deep in his heart, he feared that Zen was truly more powerful than him. Zane was not the only one who was jealous of Zen. All the proving godly warriors present saw that Zen had broken the white jade token. Not only was he not kicked out, but Zen was instead given a pair of supreme primordial weapons by the master of the heavenly Han house. Envy was apparent in the eyes of the proving godly warriors present. They felt extremely aggrieved in their hearts. Zen did not decline. Since he had already decided to join the Han clan, he would not be too estranged from the Han clan. He happily accepted the pair of short halberds. Before he threw one of them, he looked at Malloy and asked, "How do you know that I'm a sword cultivator?" He didn't display his swordsmanship in front of Malloy. The great weighty sword was also in its sheath and was kept in his space ring. There was no apparent evidence that he used a sword. Malloy smiled faintly. "I can see that the part between your thumb and index of your right hand is sunken and your index finger is rough. It could only be seen on those who have cultivated the sword for many years." As the master of the heavenly Han house, Malloy himself was at the peak level of a mid-rank true god. As such, it was not difficult for him to observe those details. His keen observation impressed many of those who heard his remark. Zen nodded his head slightly. When the pair of short halberds entered his hands, they gave off an ice-cold feeling akin to pig iron. The halberds weighed twice as much as the white jade token, but because they were heavier, it was easier to throw. So there was not much difference. After that, Malloy waved his hand and smiled. "You can start." Zen grabbed onto one of the short halberds and took a few steps back. Once again, he raised his head high, and the 9 stars in his inner world continued to spin. Power radiated from the 9 stars, like an engine ready to start a powerful machine. The strength source from the surface of the stars began to flow along the pathways in his cinnabar field and entered his right hand. Still, he had only extracted 30% of the strength source. After he took a deep breath, Zen threw the short halberd in his hand. With fantastic speed, the short halberd flew. Whoosh! There was no energy attached to that short halberd, only pure strength. However, the short halberd shot up into the sky at an unprecedented speed. With great momentum, it tore through the air as it produced a high-pitched sound. Everyone's gaze was focused on the short halberd because the speed of the halberd was too fast. It caused the air around it to constantly shrink. As such, a pale white trajectory was formed below it. In the blink of an eye, the short halberd had risen to a height of 500 feet. The speed is so fast. I wonder if he'll break the record. It seems that the master thinks very highly of this kid, so that's why he gave him the short halberds. The eyes of proving godly warriors present widened as they watched the short black halberd rise up in a straight line. A mix of amazement and jealousy was seen in their faces. After it reached a height of 500 feet, the black halberd, just like the other 100,000 white jade tokens, encountered that giant invisible net. As such, it began to quickly slow down. However, the initial speed of the short halberd was simply too fast. Even though its speed had been greatly reduced, it still rose at a spectacular speed. I wonder if he can break Zane's. A proving godly warrior had intended to say that he wanted to see if Zen could break Zane's record. However, before he could finish his words, the short halberd had already passed the 800 feet mark and flew straight towards the 900 feet mark. The highest record in the heavenly Han house is only 820 feet. He's planning to break through the 900 feet mark. It has already broken through the 900 feet mark, and I think it will soon break through 1,000 feet. A disciple of the Han clan chuckled as he heard this, breaking through the 1,000 feet mark. How absurd. That would be impossible. The binding power in the sky above the heavenly Han house was created according to the rules of the Thousand Commandments slate. Generally, the highest point is only 990 feet. No matter how powerful Thad is, would he be able to break the rules of the Thousand Commandments slate? Even a top-ranked true god would find it hard to get rid of this binding force. What the warrior said was the truth. The sub-branches of the Han clan controlled the Thousand Commandments slate in this area, and the rules were all written by them. As such, the rules naturally favored Heavenly Han House. As for the other proving godly houses in the six-burden divine city, they could not enjoy any special treatment. But after the short halberd broke through the 900 feet mark, it still easily rose upwards. After a few moments, it reached a height of 990 feet. Bam! The black halberd seemed to have hit something hard before it stopped. Everyone's gaze was high up in the sky, focused on the motionless black halberd.